Longhorn Nation, we're back.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fire the Cannon. I'm Rocky.
And I'm Megan, and we are Fire the Cannon.
Boom. Welcome back, Megan.
Thanks. I feel like I'm always last minute sliding in now that I'm back in the office, you know.
You made it.
Hey, we made it. We're here. We're having a good time.
So I kind of have a new background today because we have these posters we've been collecting from the spring event, spring teams playing. So baseball, the new baseball schedule, beach volleyball, which we will talk about, believe it or not, beach volleyball. We're going to talk about the women's and men's basketball schedules are behind us, even though we know they're winding down with postseason March Madness coming, conference championship tournaments happening, all that fun stuff. So I kind of changed up the background a little bit. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, I love it. I love that at every place that you're at, you're like, oh, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. And then it turns into this beautiful background. It's perfect.
Yeah, I'm always having to grab the posters as soon as I can because, I mean, they're free and they do so much work. And I told you the other day we were at some event at the Moody, I think one of the basketball at the Moody, and these two young students, obviously, they had this stack of all the stuff they collected and they put it straight in the trash. I'm like, no, that's so much money. The school spent.
It is.
Beautiful posters and photo shoots and schedules. And then on the back of these beach volleyball ones, they say Point Texas on the back. So you can actually use it, you know, at the game cheering for the Longhorns. So anyway, it's good to see you, Megan. We have a very special guest today. I want to tell him who's going to join us in just a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Our good friend Eric Henry of Horn 247 is going to be joining us here in just a little bit. He has been a crazy man today. He's been all over the place. So we're really excited to have him on the show. We're going to talk some Texas baseball with him. We're going to talk basketball, men's and women's. Of course, we've got some updates on football as well. So, man, we're getting the inside scoop tonight. I really like it. I'm looking forward to it. So it should be a really great show, and we appreciate y'all being here. On that note,
we're going to say hello to Chuck Smith, our buddy, and he's the land that we share, the Diamond Rockin' Ranch, we share with everyone at halfway through the show. This is the guy that we contact for that, a good friend of ours. CB, great buddy. What's up? Welcome. Thank you. Don't worry. We're going to talk about those Aggies when it's baseball time. Yeah, we have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk when Eric joins us. We're going to talk baseball, everything about this, the way this team is really coming together early gives us hope for a great season. Football with, you know, there's so much in the news, even though it's off season, with Combine and how that all went for everyone. All the tidbits about Arch Manning's NIL deals and the talk about Texas culture, all of that. Women's basketball, we have to celebrate their championship. Men's basketball, they survived and went on the road. Softball, so much happening. Beach volleyball, and we have so many top stories, so much to talk about, Megan. But how are you? How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Like I said, kind of run around like crazy. Again, we do want to give that shout out to Chuck at the Rockin' Diamond S Ranch. We appreciate everything there. The Longhorns are looking fat and happy. They're excited as this weather starts to warm up. I'll tell you, man, it has been bonkers weather here recently. We've had it felt like it was super cold there for a minute, and then it got up into the 80s, the mid 80s, felt like the hottest it's been for a while. Then we had that crazy dust storm. Rocky, where were you when that blew into town? Like, I felt like we were out at my grandfather's place out in Fort Stockton, Texas when that came in. I mean, it was instant.
I was chilling on my couch. So I've been watching the Selena. I've already seen the Selena Netflix series twice now. But it's been a couple years since I've watched it. So I watched the whole part 1, part 2, season 1, season 2 again. And today I got to episode 9 of part 2, which I know what's coming and I'm just a mess about it. But that's what I've been doing is like, cleaning laundry, but having the show going all the time because next week is South by Southwest. Well, it starts this weekend, right? South by Southwest.
It does. Yeah. The expo is this weekend. Yeah.
Yes. And I got tickets to the premiere of Selena y los Dinos with the family of the Quintanilla family is all going to be there at this big premiere downtown Wednesday at noon, because that's when they do things for South by Southwest, right? Wednesday at noon. So I'm so excited. So I've been just reliving all the Selena heartbreak and love, and I just love her so much. But when I was a kid, aging ourselves, it was 30 years ago now that since she passed.
Yeah.
30 years, just a couple days ago, 30 years since the big Astrodome show. We're coming up on 30 years since she died, but I got to see her as a kid twice. So it's really special to, just special part of I think a lot of us, our lives. Let's bring in someone else who's a special part of our lives.
That's a beautiful segue there, my friend. Beautiful segue.
Special part of our lives. Welcome, Eric Henry. How's that? If everyone knows Eric Henry, senior writer for Horns 247, beat writer, covers all Texas sports, and a native from Tampa. And we're going to talk about that later because I'm going back to Tampa again. Sorry. Welcome, Eric.
First off, Megan, Rocky, as always, it is always a pleasure to hop on with y'all. I couldn't help but giggle because I got that senior writer title that is so bougie that I didn't.
You bougie. We got to add it. We got to add it.
I appreciate. Can I say one other thing real quick before we get started?
Sure. Yes.
One of the things I greatly appreciate about doing a podcast that is hosted and driven by two women and produced is the communication and details. All right. Because I cannot tell you the amount of times that I do a podcast and it's like, yo, we need you at 4:00. All right, cool. When's the link coming? It's 4:01. All right, let's come in 5 minutes. What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about UT. UT what? Like, there's a lot of ground to cover there, right? Like, hey, we need you for 20 minutes at 4. So the fact that you get an on-time outline, you get communication, it's just noticeable that it's clear that this is a podcast that is driven and produced and hosted by two women. I'm just saying.
Well, we appreciate that. I always feel like we're screeching in last minute when we send you things like 3 or 4 hours before we go on. I'm like, does he have enough time? Like, God, I feel like I'm the person. It's me. And let me be very clear. Rocky's the most organized, amazing person.
No. I was going to say Megan's the one who has the bullet points and the times and all the things. She needs to know like everything. I just go in and drop in the times and the talking points, and Megan's like, and this cut, and this, that, and she's got the video links and she's ready to go. And so she says she's flying in, but I think that the two of us, we work it out. And I even told her, don't send him our version of the million points.
I did. Look,
send him the briefer outline.
We didn't have the slim down outline. I'm like, you know what? Roll with it. F it. We ball. Like, I'd rather him have too much than not enough.
Absolutely.
Yes. So did you grew up in Florida, right? Did you know of Selena over the years?
So I will say this. I knew of Selena in the movie because I remember my aunt when I was like 4 or 5 being in love with the movie. And I remember watching it with her, but I didn't really know her because, I was born in 91. So
yeah, the youngin' over here. We got it. We got it.
95. You had time. No, I'm just kidding. My daughter Nadia, she's grown up, knowing and loving Selena too. And it's funny because as she was growing up, I would only let her watch the movie up until like 10 minutes left and we turn it off.
Right.
And I would feel like that lady's a bad lady. And I'd never told her. And one day I finally let her watch to the end. And it was just like.
She was devastated.
Yeah. But that's, you got to learn the story.
So was it better or worse that you didn't tell her? Like all this time she'd watch this movie thinking
she knew
it was
Selena died.
Happy ending. Okay. I was going to say. Died. That'd be a cruel lesson if you're like, oh, look, you love her. She's this wonderful artist. Don't worry about the end. Don't worry about the end.
Now let's watch La Bamba and $1 Million Baby and Castaway and let's just roll them all out now.
No kidding.
We're here to talk Texas. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. We'll just do a quick the major points from this weekend that we have to share because we always like to start with the biggest story. Texas SEC championships. I heard we weren't SEC ready. We are outright owners of 2 men's and women's diving, co-champions of, we got soccer and women's basketball. What are your initial thoughts when Texas, all the talk of Texas maybe not being SEC ready, and you're from SEC country, that's where you're from, the thoughts of Texas coming in and competing for more, but out, winning or sharing 4 already so far?
It's so funny you asked me that question, right? Because I kind of let my mouth give me a little bit of trouble. I was doing a radio spot. It was during the football season, and it's a spot that they broadcast in about 30 to 40, like deep southern markets, like Starkville and Athens, Georgia, and deep southern markets. It's a great spot. I appreciate them having me on, but I was asked that question, right? Like, is Texas SEC ready? And I said, no disrespect, but Mississippi State, and Ole Miss and Vanderbilt and Kentucky have been trying to be SEC ready for 100 years, and they haven't been, right? And there were some fan bases who were not too thrilled with me. And
I mean, where's the lie?
But where's the lie though, right? Like, listen, it's funny you ask me. You mentioned me growing up in SEC territory, right? So for me, I don't remember the old Southwest Conference and Texas and A&M and Baylor and whatnot. But growing up, for me, it was Jefferson Pilot Sports. You get the Jefferson Pilot game of the week, and that usually was really bad SEC football. It was Vandy versus Kentucky. It was never the primary game, right? It was always like a 5-7 Arkansas team against like a 4-win Kentucky team. And I'm only telling you all that to say the mythology around the SEC being this juggernaut is really something that started. You can trace the lineage back to Nick Saban at Alabama, right? Because when he got to Alabama, the SEC started winning a bunch of titles, and the TV contracts and all these things kind of came into play, right? And really, I guess if you want to go LSU prior when he won a national title there. So I say all that to say, yeah, I had no doubt that Texas would be SEC ready, because you take a look at the infrastructure that Chris Del Conte has built and a lot of the financial funding that goes into some of these programs. And I said, hell yeah. I mean, Texas is going to be more SEC ready than Mississippi State or Arkansas or Vandy ever will be in the previous 100 years and the next 50. So I'm not too stunned at the success that Texas has had.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And look, I think Texas fans, whether it is arrogance or honesty, sometimes that can be a fine line, right? When it comes to talking Texas, but I don't think it surprised a ton of Texas fans. I mean, we've been confident in our brand. Now, granted, in football, of course, we're coming off a pretty rough decade, but I love that you bring up CDC and everything that he's done, because really it is just this whole view approach where it's not just a certain piece. It is complete alignment from top to bottom, from, president to AD to staff to, student athletes to just everything. I mean, I really feel like everything is considered, and it's the finer details. And again, I know Longhorns get a little spoiled at times, but, and at risk of sounding like old Tom Herman here, winning is hard. And we've talked about this on the program before. You get a little spoiled when you have a program, an athletics program that has a lot of success. Maybe we got a little bit of a wake-up call as Texas fans when we went through the dark years, but it does feel like Texas is reemerging here in a really good place, and a more complete athletics program on the whole than what I can remember in all my time watching Texas sports, right? So I think we're in for a pretty fun ride here as fans. Got to ask you, how's the beat been treating you, man? You've been all over the place, flying here and there and keeping up with everything. How you holding up? Again, we appreciate you. We know it's late.
No, yes, thank you for your time.
Of course. Listen, I think here's the fact of the matter, right? Listen, I am working a job that what would I be doing if I were not working this job? I'd be watching sports, right? And to me, that it's the old adage, right? Like, if you work a job you love, it's not work. And in that sense, that kind of holds true. But no, I will give you an outline of what I am facing coming up, right? So, I'm going to be covering baseball this weekend. So I'll do baseball Friday night. There is a double header for me, because baseball Saturday will be at 2:00. Basketball will be at 5:00. So I'll do the baseball game, provided it doesn't go in extra innings against Santa Clara. I'll walk over from the Dish over to Moody Center, and I'll take that game. So that'll be 10, 11 hours on the 40 acres. I'll come back at noonish to come hit the Sunday baseball game. I'll catch a quick nap on Monday, and then we're flying to Nashville, right? So yeah, I mean, it's a gauntlet, but again, I'm I can't complain. So when you ask me, Megan, how's the beat treating me? Listen, I did this job for 6-7 years covering group of fives, when there were 4,000, people in the stands, and maybe 1,000 people reading my stories. Right. So in that sense, that's the proving ground as to whether you love this or not. Right. Are you willing to go cover high school in the snow and you got to keep your own stats. And it's like, 9 degrees in suburban Chicago. Right. So trust me, I'm well compensated, shout out to CBS Sports, 247 Sports and Paramount, and I'm doing fine. So it's a gauntlet, but come May, you talked about going to Tampa at the top of this. Come May, I'll be back in the Sunshine State. So my vacation is coming, but we're grinding right now and having plenty of fun.
Nice. I like that you mentioned you have to get from Dish Falk back over to the Moody, because we talked about this last week. The bridge is gone, so give yourself plenty of time to figure out how you're going to cross the highway.
Yeah, maybe track down one of the mythical shuttles, the golf cart shuttles from.
I've heard
shuttles.
I've heard they exist, but I've never seen them. So we're going to figure that out.
They don't. So Texas, I'm glad you mentioned you cover Texas baseball, you cover basketball. We're going to talk about all of these tonight. Again, thank you so much. We know you're busy. We know you've been all over the place, not only your regular demands, but people want you to come talk with them. So thank you for joining us. So let's jump into Texas baseball. It's been, this is Megan's this is her home. So we'll let you lead this conversation, Megan, but I have queued up when you're ready the Texas Tech homeboy who had thoughts about what it means to beat Texas. Let's just start with this weekend's tournament.
Let's bring it again. We know Texas went out to Vegas. There were a little bit of jawing going on. Eric, did you get to witness some of that? The tech trash talk, as it were.
I heard a little bit of it.
All right, let's listen to Dylan Maxey, spelled wrong, before the season opener. This is what he had to say about what it means, a Texas Tech player, what it means to play Texas.
I'm just super excited to go to Vegas and play Texas. I think all of us are really excited for that, and we're going to be kind of with a mentality that if we don't run roll them, then we lost. But
if we don't run rule them, then we lost. Texas went on to beat them 10-1, almost run ruled them. So I feel like Texas did not win that game.
Does that count as 2 losses for Tech if they almost get run ruled? That's what I want to know. So, all right. So Eric, this is something I did want to ask you about this. You see stuff like that. You see those things. I think that was probably a pretty good motivator. Texas teams hearing that, the kids hearing that. It feels like Texas, generally speaking, has their guys ready in any sport. Like the media training feels pretty savvy. What's been your experience with that on the road, or with your interviews with Texas players versus some other schools?
No. Now, to be fair, again, you can't really compare my experience covering Florida International, where they have a very small fan base, right? And in South Florida, they're like the 9th millionth thing that people care about. The old joke, Megan, and forgive me if this comes across a little crass, but the old joke was that you couldn't hold reporters at FIU or, quite frankly, University of Miami, like you do at Texas for 4 hours, because if you try, they'll just go cover another drug bust or another hooker situation, right? Like that's just what the situation is there, right? So I say all that to say the media training you can't really compare. Now at Texas, no. The athletes are very well media trained, right? I guess I'm entering year 3 of covering football, so I'll be a little more emboldened to say the truth as opposed to maybe what I've said year 1. John Bianco and company have them very well media trained when they walk into the room. I'm not saying that they're robots, but they do come in and this little piece of paper and they go over some notes ahead of time. And that if you're asking me as a reporter, is it challenging at times? I mean, sure, I'm not going to sit there and lie to you. But in terms of, media training and preventing situations like what you just saw, that is the purpose for that, right? And we're talking about football. I would say, the other sports, basketball, the players get a little more leeway. Baseball, the players get a little more leeway. But all in all, and here's the thing, I don't necessarily mind the Texas Tech player having confidence, but there's a way to do that without saying if we don't run rule them, we lost, right? Because then you provided that bulletin board material. What player, you don't want them to go in there and be like, oh, we're going to lose. But you go that far, right, and that's what happens.
There's a line, right? And how to toe that line. And you're right, man. There's that confidence. You want to see confident players. And, I imagine in your position, those sound bites are gold. I mean, that's got to be you just kind of light up when you hear that, oh, everybody in the room knows when that happens.
We loved it. Speaking of gold sound bites, you cannot talk about playing tech in anything, especially since Texas has left left for the SEC, without talking about your Mark and his comments. Right, the comments he made, McGuire about.
Candidly, we were able to get Texas and Oklahoma out of Europe. That was a big deal for us, and I think all of you. Okay.
No, it's not. The sound's so low, but anyways, everything.
You know what it is.
Texas, everything. I mean, everything runs through Lubbock, and they ended up getting 10 runs, all over their face. So I loved it.
Yeah, the crazy thing about that, since that your Mark or excuse me, McGuire quote of everything runs through Lubbock,
I don't know why
Tech
the
is
wrong-
actually Texas is actually 4-15 against Texas since the your Mark better take care of Texas comment. So not that we're keeping score, y'all, not that we're keeping score here, but yeah. So talking about the tournament out in Vegas, Texas went in, had an absolutely great showing. Since that first drop game in the season, Texas is now they've won 10 straight. They're 10-1 on the season. Went into Vegas, handled business there. I think confidently, Texas fans, we can say perhaps these tournament curse, it is broken. Texas started off with Washington, a matchup against Washington. Now this one did get a little chippy. It ended up being 10-9. Texas came out on top with that one. Then Texas Tech again. Texas final score on that was 10-5. And then Illinois on Sunday was 15-6, where the Bats absolutely lit up. And then again, I want to point out last night, Tuesday's game. This one was another hit and fest for Texas. Texas leaves that game 15-5 run ruling Texas A&M Corpus Christi in the 8th inning. I'm going to call it a revenge game because we know last year it was a little rough watching Texas lose to Texas A&M Corpus Christi and UTRGV all in the same season. So, Eric, talk to us about baseball. What are you seeing with the Bats with Texas? Is there anything that jumps out with this team, compared to last year? What are you seeing?
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned the bats. I'm going to start with the pitching first, right? So, Jim Schlossnagle, he has a reputation. Wherever he goes, he's going to get studs, right? He's going to get arms. He's going to get talent. You talk to the guys in this rotation, whether it's, Jared Spencer, Luke Harrison, Dylan Volantis, Max Grubbs, who am I missing? Ruja Riojas. The list goes on, right? They all talk about how Schloss is not that they wanted to shade David Pierce, but they emphasize how Schloss and Max Wiener are very hands-on when it comes to the pitching, right? And I think you see that, right? I kind of like the tagline where they say, I think it was Andre Duplantier said, we don't have starters and relievers. We have outgetters. That's what we have, right? And I love that quote from Dre there as far as that's concerned. So the pitching, I think, is still a little wait and see, right? Obviously there were some high-scoring games out in Vegas, high-scoring game against Corpus Christi. So we'll see how that goes. But as far as the bats are concerned, that was never my concern with Texas, right? You got Max Ballou, you got Jay Flo, Adrian Rodriguez. We'd heard, great things about the freshman coming out of camp, right? So I never thought Ethan Mendoza, he was a guy who, no pun intended, was batting below the Mendoza line, for the first few games of the season, really picked up his bat. So I always felt like, Will Gasparino's bat's going to come around, Kimball Schusler's bat's going to come around. So the hitting isn't too much of a shock. I am curious to see how that's going to kind of come into play because, in 10, 11 days, SEC play starts, right? And that's when everything ratchets up because you're talking about the best league in America. But overall, I think it's a good start for Texas. I'm really interested to see how this Santa Clara series goes because Schloss is kind of intimated that, hey, I'm still tinkering with the rotation, kind of seeing where things fall. So over the next 10, 11 days to kind of see where these, kind of the rotation fits. Cade Bing was slated to get the start on Sunday. That's not going to be Dylan Volantis. We'll see how the big 6'6" freshman goes. So yeah, I really, I'm kind of interested to see how this pitching staff kind of shakes out before SEC play.
No, I agree with that. I mean, that's certainly been a concern for Texas for a minute. The bullpen, especially. There's been some questions for Texas around certainly last season. And I've got to say, coming into this season, now again, we emphasize this every time. Early in the season, the sky is not falling. It is not the end of the world if things don't go perfectly exactly how you want. Baseball is a different beast, right? But I'll admit there have been some games. I mean, even last night against Texas A&M Corpus Christi, Texas gave up 5 runs in an inning. Now, the Bats came and made up for it, and Texas came roaring back. But there have been a few times as fans, I'm like, all right, we're still we're still tweaking this lineup. We're still figuring it out. It feels like to me, and please jump in here, tell me if you think this isn't accurate. It feels like to me, like you mentioned, Schloss brings in dudes, right? The velocity on some of these pitches is insane. Control seems to be a little bit, they're figuring it out. We got some young guys. What are your thoughts there?
No, it's interesting you mentioned that because in the Dartmouth series, I think you saw a little bit of that, right? Especially from Jared Spencer, big Indiana State transfer. I mean, he's got an arm, he can hit 95, 96 on the gun, but, plunked a couple guys, hitting the strike zone's a little bit erratic. When we talked with Schloss post game, said that he wasn't missing by much, but you still miss, right? Still putting guys on base. That's what matters. But to your point, Megan, it's funny you mentioned the dudes he brings in, because when we talked with Schloss before the season, he was upfront. He's like, listen, I don't like small guys. Unless you're really fast, I don't like small guys. I like big guys. I like guys who are big and strong. He talked about the weight room program, and all the players talked about the weight room program. Again, not wanting to shade DP, but saying that there's been kind of this renewed emphasis around hitting the weights, right? And you see it, whether it's Will Gasparino was 6'6", $170 last year. I'm kidding, Will.
Soaking wet, maybe. Sorry,
right? But he's bulked up. J-Flow bulked up.
Yeah.
You see a lot of the pitchers, and I think those things matter, right? And again, I'm not shading the Big 12, but in the SEC, when you go to Ole Miss, you go to Vandy, you go to some of these schools that are going to be, even A&M, they're struggling. But I'm just talking about from a physical standpoint. Those are big dudes, like guys who look like they could play, maybe not in the majors, but you could feel the AA or AAA team with them right now. So that certainly is a big thing as well, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, again, at risk it sounding like a creepy old lady here, you can tell they've hit the weights. Uniforms are fitting different. I won't go too far into detail here, but I mean, really, like you said, proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
You can see it out there with your own eyes. It's not hard to see. It seems to me too, like mechanics have really improved. Have you talked to Schloss at all about, what is the routine? What are they going through? How have they? I'll use Gasparino as an example. His mechanics really, he's gotten smoother. He seems like he's seeing the ball better, and we've seen that pay off. Those power hits. I mean, he cranked one last night to center. What was it? Center right field.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, we had how many guys? 4 guys last night with home runs, with Galvan cranking 2 of them out there. So Mendoza, like you mentioned, Galvan, Gasparino, and Borba all had home runs, and these are power hits with some decent wind going on. Have you talked to Slosh about those mechanics and what he looks for and how he's building them up?
It's interesting. I'm going to come to Slosh in a second. First off, I think it's too low. All the guys have emphasized Troy Tulowitzki, just as far as what much of a joy it was to have him back. The guys who were with the program last year and some of the newcomers saying, man, to work with someone who was, a multi-time all-star, one of the better shortstops of the 2000s and early 2010s. I mean, that certainly plays a factor. But I'm going to go in a different direction. Not necessarily mechanics, but it's interesting. Jim Schlossing was a long-standing relationship with a guy named Brian Kane, who's a mental coach. I actually wrote an article you can find on Horns 247. You dig back, you'll find it. He's a long-standing relationship with Brian Kane going back to his days at TCU. And one of the things that Schloss said, that when he works with his guys and he gets a new team, he wants, especially guys at the plate, to understand the game's mental. Baseball, a certain amount of baseball's between the ears, right? Understanding that if you go 3 for 10, all right, that's a success. That's a success, right? And sometimes you're going to go 0 for 4. Sometimes you're going to go 1 for 5, right? But mentally, how can you handle that? I think you're seeing because I didn't ask the guys about it last year, I can't say if it is an improved mental approach compared to this year, but I can definitely say a emphasis on the mental approach, right? Not psyching yourself out up there at the plate, right? Same thing. Yeah, look at, J-Flow in the field, right? We all saw how, the A&M game last year, that kind of, J-Flow had worked through some of his struggles and they all kind of went to, what in the A&M game. But you see just kind of the mental aspect of the game. I think you're seeing a lot of that with the guys' approach at the plate. And also, I think Jim's kind of empowering the guys, go swing the bat. He's said it in multiple post games. He's like, listen, I want you guys to go swing the bat. I don't want guys, if you're taking a call strike 3 here or there, that's okay, but swing the bat. That's one of the things that he emphasized in the Dartmouth series. Like, you guys have the ability, go swing the bat. With that confidence and that renewed emphasis and just, hey, go play. I think that is what kind of makes a factor here with some of the guys in the early part of the year.
Absolutely love that you brought that up. For those following along, we did put the link to that article, that 247 Sports article by Eric Henry, talking about the mental aspect of the game there. I agree. You know, we brought this up on the show, I think it was last week. There is almost a palpable difference between just the vibes. Like, I hate to be that guy to go on the vibes of everything, but really, when you compare last year's team to this year's team, looking in the dugout, seeing how the guys are playing with each other. You know, we talk about culture all the time with football. There has been a noticeable change in that culture, in that vibe in the dugout with this Texas baseball team compared, you know, last year to this year. Now, again, I know very different circumstances. You don't have a coach on the hot seat. You got probably, you know, arguably one of the best coaches in college baseball leading your team. Things feel different. Guys are bulking up. But that's noticeable. That mental difference is noticeable. And yeah, I appreciate, I think it was, you're right, after the Dartmouth series, he said, yeah, I got some guys that are out there. I'm not going to be mad at you if you take the chance and miss. He's like, now I've got a few guys I still got to work with. They're still a little hesitant. I don't want you to be hesitant. I want you to go out there, take that chance. If you didn't make it, take the chance. And that seems like such a shift from where this team was last year, or even a few years ago. And it seems very noticeable to me, for sure.
Well, Megan and Rocky, I apologize. I can only go so long without turning into an interviewer here. So I apologize for taking over your show. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention you talked about culture, and there's someone who is not a believer in culture. You couldn't mention the word culture and me not think about old Cam Newton spout off at the mouth. How he just, you know, culture doesn't, not a real thing. I couldn't resist.
Get to it.
Yeah,
we'll get to that when we get into our Texas football. We got it queued up, ready to go. Yeah. Okay. So let's make the baseball conversation a little bit broader. We know Schloss brought in this, you know, this mindset, this, you know, building confidence in his players that you talked about, really honing in on the mental aspect of the game. That he just, we know, everybody knows Texas, you know, took him from A&M. He was buddies with CDC when they were at TCU together. Like, everyone knows that story. We see when you pull out that leadership of the head coach that really understands how to run the whole program. We have to talk about what's happening to these other teams, including the Aggies, falling apart. They lost again last night, this time to UTSA, 5 losses, all to not great teams. What are you seeing when you watch, when you keep up with all of the programs, right? So what are you seeing that's missing from the Aggies? They started the season number 1 in the country. They have arguably, you know, the player that's going to go number 1 in the draft, Jace. They have everything lined up. They even they kept, you know, their coach early to try to keep the roster together. But the product on the field has them firing up the keyboards and blasting their own players.
I'll say 2 things. One, you talk about Jace Laviolette, you know, he's back, but Gavin Grovich, and I hope I'm pronouncing the last name correctly. I always botch that one. Freshman of the year, he's out for the year with a shoulder injury, right? I think that's playing a big factor. Also, if you talk with anyone who's played for Jim Schlossnagle, that is a very specific mindset, a very specific type of coach, a very specific, you know, not culture, but just kind of the way he goes about things. And I always kind of wondered with early, you know, first, you know, then temporarily joined Texas, and hey, we're going to get the head coaching job and coming back. He's got to find what his style is, right? Because he can't go in there and be Jim Schlossnagle, right? Like, that's not going to work. He doesn't have the, you know, history of taking teams to Omaha. He's got to be his own man. Secondly, for players, you got to find out, like, okay, in one sense, it's kind of like, you know, going from the disciplinarian to maybe a little bit more of the, you know, the players coach, right? And finding that mentality of how do we adjust to maybe not, and again, I'm not shading Michael Early, but I'm not saying he's not pushing them, but it's a different type of, you know, style than Jim Schlossnagle, right? How are they internally wondering, like, yo, we got to play to the standard of being the number 1 team in the nation, right? You have the talent, you sure it's there, but you know it's there. But the start they've had, it's been interesting. So I do chalk some of it up to injuries, but I also thought going into the year that this is such a hard, you know, shift, right? In a way, right? It's like, and again, I wasn't here for the Tom Herman era, but I heard about Tom Herman kind of ruling with this iron fist, right?
Pain.
And and I've heard plenty of stories, whether it's been from players or reporters, et cetera, right? And it's not that Steve is a complete shift, because Steve can, you know, get in after you're behind. If he certainly has that capability. but it's not a complete like overhaul. And you're not talking about a first time head coach either, right? You know, Steve had been a head coach twice before, whereas Early, he's still trying to figure out, all right, how do I adjust when my team underperforms, when they go on a losing streak, et cetera. So I think it's a combination of things that kind of is really biting the Aggies. I think they'll rebound, but I'm not too surprised if they're, maybe not this bad, but that there'd be a bit of growing pains.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with you. I do think the mental rut that they're in right now, that's something that they're going to have to climb out of. To me, that is the biggest block right now. In a way, Rocky's probably going to get mad at me for saying this, but in a way, I do feel like Early is kind of like a Rodney Terry situation, right? You're kind of scrambling for a head coach last minute. You've got a players coach that the players love. They want him there. He's been with the team. He understands it, right? But he's thrown into kind of this impossible situation with short notice, not a lot of now. The difference here, to your point, Eric, is Rodney Terry did have head coaching experience prior to this, and that's that counts against Early, right? That's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, Rodney Terry actually won his first season.
Right? Yeah, there's that too.
Really.
There's that too. But right. Yeah, interesting situation over there at A&M. Just
that's
as
a good analogy, though.
Yeah, just as a quick update, A&M they were tied with Texas Southern 2-2, but they are starting to pull away in that 7-2 right now.
Oh, good for them. They need it. So let's get our thoughts. This is one of the Aggie players, and he wrote, he knows that things aren't going, the way they're not playing to the best of their abilities, but then he goes on to pretty much tell the fans, like, we're working to be better, and let's go back to being Aggie fans instead of like opposing teams. That they're getting disgusting and ridiculous posts. So I saw some people say, quit worrying about social media, but at the same time, when you have to get on and scold your own fan base for being disgusting. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? That kind of.
Rocky, it's easy to say get off of social media. Listen, right? Like, I'm 33, almost 34, so I can remember a time without social media. I can remember a time in which you could leave school or wherever it was and go home, and you didn't have to worry about all the things following you, right? I understand, and I'm gonna try not to rant too long. I understand we're in the NIL era. And we look at these kids, and Rick Barnes said it, right? Rick Barnes called out one of his guys earlier this year saying, hey, you're getting paid to shoot. So shoot the ball, right? I understand we look at them like pros. Yeah. And in a way, they are because of the salaries they're making. But I'm telling you right now, you see things that these kids, young adults, young men do on a daily basis that remind you that they are 19, 20, and 21. That just 22. It is what it is, right? I'm saying all that to say, for the folks who say just get off of social media, they don't know a life without social media.
You can't.
That's a good point. They grew up with the phone in their hand.
If you're a freshman coming in, Megan, you're born in 2007.
I feel called out. I feel called out here. Good Lord. Just let me grab my cane real quick, my walker.
No, listen, I'm right. I mean, listen, as someone who graduated high school in 2010, I'm right there with you, right? So, I mean, if you're born in 2007, you don't know a life without social media. You don't know how to say, all right, I'm going to put this down. You don't know how to not respond. You don't know how to not have rabbit ears. So when you say, like, Rocky, to your question, what do I think about that? I think it's on people to be better, right? And I don't know what the commentary was at A&M, but I saw a kid at Kansas who, Kansas basketball, they're having a rough year, and a kid saying, I'm getting, and he posted the screenshots of N-word this and
right here.
There you go, right? Like
KYS, which means, unalive yourself.
Right.
Praying you effing die. These are messages to a basketball player.
Right.
And then the N-word, which we'll take off the screen, but oh my goodness. Yeah.
So you tell, and I'm saying, rhetorically, like, you tell me, how do you ignore that, especially when you don't have the wherewithal? Because I know, Megan, you wanted to jump in, but you don't know a life without it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They don't know a life without it. And I will tack on top of that. You want to talk about, we're in the NIL era. Most of these NIL deals, and I won't say most, I will say all, confidently say all of these NIL deals have an element of social media promotion. You cannot exist. I'm in marketing. I'm in advertising. You cannot exist That is part of how they make their money. You cannot exist in a world where you're building your brand and advertising without social media. That's just a fact of the world that we live in today. So to your point, not only do they not know how to get off of it, they couldn't if they wanted to, right? I mean, that's part of the built-in deal, how they make their money, how they build their brand. And at the end of the day, they're kids, man. Their brains are still developing. They are kids.
Somebody's children, yeah.
I am glad. I mean, I had phones. I had a phone a cell phone in college, but I am glad I didn't have that kind of connectivity, that I didn't have, the standard wasn't to post everything that you're doing every day and live your life under that microscope. That is a difficult place. Our coaches talk about it all the time. That's a difficult place to be. That's a ton of mental stress for kids that are still developing as adults, for kids that are still college, and throw on top of it all the other stresses of being an athlete, and throw on top of it the pressures of living up to contracts that they have now, right? There's that added pressure too. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think telling a kid to get off social media, deal with it, you're a paid athlete, I think that just rings false, and you don't really understand what the actual situation is there.
Yeah. And then let's say it really quick. I mean, it's one of the things that I try to take into account as a reporter, right? Listen, kids are going to see what you write, and I will say this, publicly, right? Like, there are people within the UT athletics administration who see what we write, and it will get back to kids in one way or another. So yeah, to say just get off of social media, that's, I understand it if you are of a certain age and you can just pull back, right? But even me, like, I do this job, which requires me to consistently be up on news. And you all know what's really hard for me to do at night? Like, put this thing away from my bed, because I was really
Right.
bad. At one point, earlier in my tenure covering Texas, I would keep this thing right by my pillow. And I was wondering, why am I not getting any sleep? It's because mentally I've got this phone near me. So yeah.
And if they don't read it, everyone around them is reading it and telling them. So it's there, and hopefully, and this is not what, like we just showed, this is not, Texas fans have done it too. Every fan base has people who lash out or say awful things, and it gets back to them. But yeah, it is that balance of, they are semi-pro professional, right? Semi-pro right now. They're paid professionals at some level, but at the same time, they are still young, growing minds who committed to your university to try to represent you at the best of their abilities, right? So, all right. So we'll move on to football in just a second, but let's say there's a few people that wanted to say hello to you. CB said that Eric Henry brought the guns to the Cannon show. Love it. He loves your perspective as an outsider from the university. Love that. Our buddy Helio, he says, good evening, Fire the Cannon. And Evan Lepeau, what an excellent guest. Go like the stream. Yes, like and subscribe to Fire the Cannon. We're so glad to have you tonight. So let's move on. There's so much to talk about. Texas football. And you brought this up, and CB brought it up about the Cam Newton story. So we'll start there with the Texas culture. We'll get into the combine and how the culture and the development and all those things are feeding into the combine. We talked earlier about media, the way they're prepared to speak with the media, how well they shined in front of the media this week at the combine. We'll talk about all of that, years of preparation. Okay, so let's show, we're not going to show it all. It's like 2 or 3 minutes. We're not going to show it all, but we'll show a little bit of what Cam Newton had to say about the Texas football quote unquote culture that they bought or whatever. Here we go.
Okay, probably the least vulnerable group that you could pick out, 18 to 22-year-old men, young men that are trying to figure out who they are, right? And they're this transition of moving away from home, finding out who they are in a world of social media where it's like, put everything out there that's make myself look as good as I can look. But
Kenny, look, bro, look. Coach Sarkisian, I'm cool. They're like, all that shit, cool. Yeah. Building the culture does take time, but having access to the boosters attached to University of Texas also helps.
Okay, because they have the #1 recruiting class.
Hello.
In the nation right now. So,
and they also probably have the #1 spend in the nation. Like, come on, dog. Come on, bro. Come on. Like, and I'm not trying to discredit what building a culture, like the importance of that. Shit. Ask Gerard Mayo, did he have time to build a culture? It takes time.
Yeah.
First year head coaches, that's the number one thing that they say, yo, we're trying to get guys to buy in to the culture. It's different now. But, brother.
All right. Then he goes on to, what am I doing? I always do that. Okay. Then he goes on to, talk about pretty much Texas bought their culture. What is your thoughts on that? Because lots of schools are spending lots of money and they can't keep their kids out of jail on the weekends. Or, you know what I'm saying? Georgia. Like there's lots of schools that are spending good money buying top talent, rewarding top talent financially to choose their school, right? Which I'm all about. But they can't keep their kids out of trouble or representing the university well and win games together. What are your thoughts?
All right, I'm going to answer that question, Rocky, because it's a good question. But we're all friends here, so I'm going to sidebar.
Of course.
All right.
Keep it real.
Rocky, I know you are happily married. Megan, I won't pry into your personal life, but I will say this. What would y'all's impression be if y'all saw a man who had on a button-down long sleeve shirt, not buttoned up at the neck, with a bow tie, a random hat on, and a random Houston Rockets Hakeem Olajuwon jersey on? Can we start there?
Are you talking about Cam Newton's outfit? Because he always is outlandish with his clothing. And the silly thing is, you can't see it if you're listening on the podcast or streaming audio. You can't tell. You can go find the video later. But he's got like his little spectacle glasses, all silly on his face, acting like he's so worn out. Like being trying to listen to the gibberish coming out of Sark's mouth is the way he's behaving while he's watching that. Right.
That is the thing in itself. And I'm not like saying, okay, you can't be outlandish, but that in itself is like, all right, Cam, it's hard for me to take you seriously when you look like you just grabbed 5 different outfits and put it on. So let's start there.
That's his thing, right?
Look, I'm not going to comment on his outfits. I don't disagree with you, but I'm also a 42-year-old woman that wears a cape to football games. So I need to like reel myself back in a little bit here.
But Meg, that's a football game. Cam walks around like that Tuesday afternoon to go.
It's fair.
Work.
He does have fun with fashion.
So all right, but no, in all seriousness, here's the thing. All right, let's just take it from top to bottom. Just having a large NIL funding does not equate to success. Go ask Jimbo Fisher the past few years. That's step one. Okay. You can go back to my home state, Florida State, Florida, Miami. They've struggled. They had struggled for many years. You don't just buy players. Steve Sarkisian himself wouldn't tell you, of course, that you can do it with no talent. Of course, he's not going to say that, right? You need good players. He's not silly enough to say that. But culture matters, right? And what frustrated me, and I wrote this in my 4 Downs column that's up on the site today, is 2 things frustrated me about Cam's comments. One, all he had to do, if Cam is trying, listen, the dude played a decade in the NFL, won a national championship. If he's just like, I just want to say anything because I played, then what can I say to that, right? Anyone's allowed to have an opinion. But your opinion can be ill-informed. We live in a society where we think, I'm entitled to opinion. You are, but it can be wrong. It can be factually wrong. All Cam had to do was pick up the phone and call any Texas player over the last 3 years and say, hey, I heard this comment about Steve Sarkisian. I think it's nonsense. Yo, what's the deal here, right? Because I talked when my first year on the beat was 2023, entering the 23 season, last year in the Big 12. My first event covering Texas was Big 12 Media Days. I spoke with Jalen Ford, Jordan Whittington. They all said to me, the difference between us now and previous is in the past, Tom Herman era, we would have pointed fingers. We would have said, all right, you missed that assignment. You did this. You messed this up. Now there's a level of togetherness. I'll never forget Jordan Whittington saying this to me at Big 12 Media Days. He was like, listen, Eric, here's what it is. We just really rock with each other. I don't know any other way to say that, right? So there's step one. The thing that really frustrated me about Cam's comments is about them being inherently dishonest. Do you guys know offhand how many NFL players on that 2010 Auburn team that Cam played with who were drafted that year?
Okay,
right.
Yeah.
There were only 3 players drafted from that team. So let's just, for comparison's sake, compare that to the 14 players that Texas sent to the combine. So Cam should know something about that one player being him as a force of nature, as a standard setter, as someone who took an Auburn program that was not that good prior to his first year. Remember, he was only at Auburn 1 year, and took them from being a run-of-the-mill average SEC team to national champions. That's one guy who came in and said, we're not losing.
Right.
Cam Newton knows that. There was only one other draft pick on offense that he played with. So he, more than anything, would be qualified to say, the opposite approach, which is, sometimes hard work can beat talent when talent doesn't work hard. You don't always have to buy it. It's about if everyone believes, because that Auburn team, again, it's 15 years. I'm not disrespecting them, but they're not going to go down as one of the most talented national championship winning teams of all time.
Right.
The one guy came in and said, I'm changing the culture. And that was him. So that's why, and I was joking, about the outfit, but that's why it struck me more of him being an entertainer than actually wanting to go in and give a informed perspective.
Agreed. This to me felt like a Stephen Smith moment, right? Like he wants that soundbite. He wants that clickbait that comes in, because the stuff that he's talking about here, to your point, you brought this up earlier, he could have easily called the players, staff. I mean, the man is connected. They would take the call. He could have called and verified this kind of stuff. The thing that struck me about his comments immediately right off the bat, where I just kind of tuned him out, is when he said, oh, well, Texas spends the most. It's been really well documented. Texas does not spend the most. That has been a thing. Now, they have a big bag. I'm not saying they don't. I'm not saying they don't spend money, but that's been a conversation with the players. Look, I could have gotten a little bit more money elsewhere, but I came here because of the culture. Like NIL helped. Yeah, absolutely. But I came here because of the culture. I came here to learn. I came here to be developed. Look at the players going to the combine. Look at the players that were drafted last year. This staff has proven they built the culture pretty dang quickly, all things considered, especially given the starting point. They've gotten guys. They've completely done a 180 with the Texas reputation of not being able to develop players. That's changed completely, right? Sark has even shown that when the NFL comes calling, not just for his players, but also for his staff, man, he hasn't missed replenishing that. So it feels like all good things. The last point that I do want to point out with this is I feel like so many people, and maybe, if I've got to give a little bit of credit or benefit of the doubt here, maybe this is what happened, but I feel like so many people misconstrue or misunderstand the difference between what is paid and valuations.
Sure.
Right. Arch Manning is making $6 million this year. No, he didn't. He's valued at a lot of money. Now,
we'll talk about
this year might be a little different, right? But again, to your, like you said, Eric, I just verify before you spew. To me, this just felt very much like, I agree with you wholeheartedly, an entertainment clip. Let's go, or the hot soundbite and the clickbait, and get people's feathers ruffled. My feathers are ruffled. I appreciate it.
Yeah, to me, it just sounded like he's removed from the program, right? He's not inside the program. And like you said, speaking with people in the know, I like Sark's comment. Haters are a good problem to have. Nobody hates the good ones. They hate the great ones. Whether or not this is related to, it's a Kobe Bryant quote, whether or not this is related to that Cam Newton, diss on whether or not Sark's culture is legit or genuine, that was about the same time.
I'll add one last thing for anyone, not for the Texas audience, but for anyone on a broad scale who may say, I don't see what's the big deal about Cam. Maybe he's telling the truth. This is where I say it sounded like he was entertaining, because even his own words were inconsistent. I'll fill you in. Cam Newton pissed off a bunch of his old Carolina Panthers teammates because he made a comment speaking, I guess, to entertain, when he said that when he got to Carolina, they were a bunch of losers. Okay. And then
team guy.
Right. But hang on, Megan and Rocky. Doesn't that imply that if they were a bunch of losers before you got there and you changed things, doesn't that imply that you changed the culture? So it's not consistent, Cam. So that is what I'm saying, that I think, for anyone who may wonder, Texas, they spend a bunch of money. Cam's telling the truth. That's more of Cam being an entertainer than anything else.
Yeah. And the shock value, that's That's what gets the clicks, right? And that's what gets us talking about it. All right. But moving on to the substance, not only did Sark bring on the culture that he talks about, committing to each other, toughness, and one of the big things is embracing the hate, right? Going on the road and being the only team in all of college football to never lose on the road on a true road game. In the last 2 years, they haven't lost a true road game, right? And got into some hostile, big environments. But one of the other things that has developed under Sark and staff and crew and training and nutrition and all the people involved is their development of preparing them for the NFL. We saw them this year with record-breaking numbers at the Combine, last year with the most drafted in forever. So let's look at this, play a quick video of what Sark was saying when this Combine weekend ended up just being a massive infomercial for Texas football, right? They had the fastest receivers. They had, the offensive line, so many representatives all over. Jade shine. So let's listen to what Sark had to say about what his program is doing for NFL development.
Very well have double-digit players taken in this year's draft. So how do you make sure that so many of your guys are NFL ready?
Well, I think it's development, right? And one, you look at the measurables when they're coming out of high school, right? Height, weight, length, speed, things of that nature. But then when we get them, are we developing them within schemes that resonates with the NFL? When they watch our players play, when they watch them practice, can it translate to the NFL? I think in the weight room, our winter conditioning, our speed training, all those things matter. What our guys are doing in the classroom, what they're doing in the community, all those things, we want to make sure it's attractive to NFL teams. And so we try to do our best on that front. I think our players recognize that and they put forth the effort. And I think recruits recognize that too.
Yeah, and Quinn,
I love that he threw in at the end, and recruits recognize it too. They're seeing the development. They have goals of, being in the NFL, right? They want to hear that from the coaching staff when they go on their visits. But for Sark and staff to put on paper, these are the biggest names in the draft this year, and they're coming from Texas. What have you seen in the turnaround, even just in the 3 years you've covered Texas, but, you followed, you understood what was happening in the national scene of Texas not getting even somebody at the Combine till now? What does that turnaround look like to you?
Well, I mean, when you talk about them not necessarily getting guys to the Combine, I mean, I think, of course, if you win, you will send players to the Combine, right? And you talked about the Combine being one massive infomercial for Texas. I just look at it as an entire, kind of circle of A, this is the byproduct of winning. B, if you come to Texas, and I mentioned this, I did radio earlier earlier today, I should say, earlier this week, earlier today, up in Waco. And I mentioned to the host there that two-pronged. One, look at guys like Isaiah Bond, Andrew Makuba. It says, hey, if you come in, Matt Golden, come here from your previous program, because of course the transfer portal is real, and we can develop you, right? Like maybe you felt you were underdeveloped, or maybe you're a talent that's on the rise, different circumstances. We can get the best out of you. There is that aspect. If you're a true freshman and you look at guys who've been at the program for multiple years, like Gunnar Helm being a really good example, showing, hey, maybe you are a guy who's a little under the radar, or someone who's looking to get the most out of their talent coming out of high school. We can develop you, and this can be the end result for you. So yeah, from that aspect, I do think it is very real. The other thing I thought was key is not just sending guys to the Combine, right? Like, Texas wasn't the only school that sent double-digit guys to the Combine, but these guys showed out. Matt Golden running a 4.29. I know IB took, I thought an unnecessary beating. Look, kid's supposed to be confident, right? He's going to say he's going to break the record. He fell short, so on and so forth. He still ran a 4.39. That's a very, very fast time, by the way, folks. Quinn Ewers showing out. That's another one. When I said heading into the Combine, Quinn Ewers is going to come out of this with an improved draft grade. Why? Because for all the things you want to say about Quinn, and I've been labeled a Quinn defender, but all the things you want to say about Quinn, he can toss the football around in a t-shirt and shorts. He's going to look good, right? He did an excellent job adapting to receivers that were not his at the Combine, which unfortunately, Will Howard had a rough day, trying to get on the same page with receivers who are his, right? So that to me also was the other aspect. It's not that they just sent those guys, but they all seemingly or virtually all of them left Indy with an improved draft grade. Like that's another infomercial as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you mentioned the improved draft grade. We'll start with one of the biggest risers, stock up big time for a lot of people. You already high coming in as the Thorpe Award winner, and one of the leaders on one of the best defenses in the country all year. Very experienced, lots of great film. We all know his versatility. He ran really well, 4.39. But they have NFL.com has Jahdae Barron listed number 1 as the top. Improved his stock. What did you see from Jahdae, especially in his media availabilities, that just helped him shoot up and solidify? Could be a top 15 round pick.
It's funny, Megan and Rocky, right? So Jahdae is a personality. If you've ever been around Jahdae Barron, he is not shy. He is a personality. But one of the things about him in terms of the football sense is probably a little small, quote unquote, right? Like you wonder, what is Jahdae? Because I know it was, some people had him, I think Texas had him listed at 5'11", 205, right? I never thought Jahdae was 205. I did get a kick. Side note, you can tell when people are at an event live versus when they're listening to something back, because Jahdae made a joke at SEC Media Days about, oh yeah, I'm 240. And I saw an outlet, which I won't name, a fringe outlet, say, Jahdae Barron is bulked up to 240. I'm like, God, he was joking.
He wouldn't be able to put his pants on. You
stand next to Jahdae Barron, he's nowhere near 240 pounds. Yeah. But on a serious note, no, I think the size was something to see, like, okay, if he's going to be your number 1 lockdown corner in an era where you have, like the Richard Shermans and some of these bigger corners, Tariq Woolens, others, how's he going to fare? Well, the fact that he came out and ran as well as he did, in addition to, and I've said this from, Jahdae Barron was one of the first guys who really made an impression on me when I first started covering the team. His football instincts, his football IQ are off the charts. Don't confuse his 5'10" and say 5'10" and 3/4, like a $193. That frame, for the fact that if you're where you need to be at all times, that makes up for your size, right? So I thought him running well solidified what he needed to, as far as I'd be stunned if Jahdae slides past 15 in my mind, the first 15 picks of the draft.
That's impressive. That's impressive. So yeah, Eric, on that note, who do you think? So Jahdae, we know, rose up in the rankings, really made a good name for himself. Do you think there's any sleepers on this Texas team that's going to surprise people in the draft, go a little higher than people might expect?
You're saying of the draft eligible players this year, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I'll give you 2. I am interested to see how Andrew Makuba tests on pro day, because he didn't do a lot of the testing in Indy. I think if Drew can, I think would run like 4.46 or something like that, or maybe 4.5. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. But if Drew can get to 4.4, because he measured under 6 foot, right? Now, listen, I'm not someone who thinks that to be a safety, you got to be 6'2", 220. I think Drew plays much bigger than his size, but he measured under it. So if he can come back at pro day, I think he's a sleeper. I keep seeing these 4th round comps on Gunnar Helm. I know Gunnar ran 4.9 at one point and then ran 4.8, brought it back down in his second run. Gunnar
busted up ankle,
sprained ankle.
Oh, did you see the picture of that ankle?
You beat me to the punch, right? I was going to say, A, Gunnar, when he's healthy, plays fast. B, if you want any indicator into the mindset of who Gunnar Helm is as a player, is the fact that he said, all right, busted up ankle, who cares? I'm going to go run it back, right? Yeah. Finish all the drills. So I think he is a sleeper. I keep seeing these 4th round grades on Gunnar Helm. I mean, I as a native of Tampa, I would love my Tampa Bay Buccaneers to go get a Gunnar Helm at tight end. And lastly, I'm a Quinn Ewers fan. I mean, I don't have any shame in saying that. Like, you can pick apart some of the deficiencies of Quinn's game, and they are real, things he needs to improve. But I think if he goes to a Detroit, a place I'd love to see him land, LA. I did that for you, Megan. LA. If he lands in LA with, there you go. You and Chip Brown both. There you go. If he lands with LA with Sean McVay, where he can sit for a year or 2 behind whatever's left of Matthew Stafford, or sit for a year or 2 behind Jared Goff, right? Mm-hmm. I think those could be 2 great landing spots for Quinn.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. My sleeper, I have Barron Sorrell. I think he's going to. I've been hearing just great things about how he interviewed. But also, who would you say is going to come first off the board? A lot of people are talking about Matthew Golden could actually, for all year long, it was Banks, and of course he still has first grade, picks. Many people have him still in the first round. What about Matthew Golden coming off first? Let's hear this quick video. Todd McShay on why he thinks he'll be the first wide receiver off the board.
I think when it's all said and done, I'm just going to have him my number one receiver. Matthew Golden is a lightning rod. His ability to get in and out of breaks, his like his snap, his sharpness, how crisp he is his secret sauce. And then his ball skills too. You think about some of the big catches.
Body control.
And so when Golden comes out today and runs a 4.29 and has the workout that he had, I was thrilled for him, man.
5'11", 1'9".
All right. Thoughts on
where's he? Yeah, that speed at 4.29. Like, I love that he didn't say a word. He hadn't talked any trash. He just came out like we talk about Gunnar Helm running on that busted ankle. I love that Golden came out just knowing he had that in him and bust off with a 4.29.
That was funny when crazy. Doc, I like you said that. Doc Allen posted this video. So this whole time, Matthew Golden was the fastest player and didn't say a word, because we've been hearing, everybody else, Blue and Bond and who's going to run the fastest. I'm the fastest. I'm going to beat, Worthy's time and blah, blah, blah. And here's Matthew Golden just rolls up and runs the fastest time of all wide receivers in the combine.
I'll quickly give you a thought on Matt.
Yes.
The thing that Todd McShay noted, right? And listen, I'm not claiming to be Todd McShay or Mel Kiper, but it is always funny when you see some of the national guys see things that if you cover a team, right, you've seen day in and day out. The body control. How many times have you seen Matt Golden make a catch and he's catching the ball with his hands, right? It doesn't get on his chest. He goes out, he uses his body, he shields. He's not a massive guy, but he uses his size well, goes and gets the ball. We've seen that all year. But Rocky, to your question, who do I think is going to be the first Longhorn off the board? I keep seeing these things about Kelvin Banks' arms are short or he should play guard. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, guard.
Whatever. Kelvin Banks is a day one starter, left tackle for 10 years. Simple as that. And those guys don't grow on trees. Will Campbell is a great offensive lineman. I just am, and I'm probably biased because I cover Texas. Maybe if I covered LSU, I feel differently. I think Kelvin Banks is better than Will Campbell. I think Kelvin Banks is going to be the first Longhorn drafted. It'll be close. Matt did a great job for himself at the draft, at the combine, but I think those type of offensive linemen, left tackles, don't grow on trees.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the stat that they put up there, right? They kept talking about, he should be a guard. He should be a guard. But, when they put up the stat, he started however many games of his career, all of them at left tackle, like that in parentheses. Like, he's a left tackle, man.
Yeah. All right. So we want to celebrate women's basketball next, but Megan, first you're going to share some info about Diamond Rockin' S Ranch. Let me get that ready for you.
The Rockin' Diamond S Ranch.
Rockin' Diamond S Ranch. I don't know, and I know what it is. Rockin' Diamond S Ranch. Go, Megan.
That's right, y'all. So look, if you are looking for a beautiful hill country getaway, look no farther than the Rockin' Diamond S Ranch, nestled in the wonderful city of Blanco in the hill country of Texas, right near Johnson City. It is a quick drive to Austin or San Antonio. The property sleeps 14 with one primary home and 2 fully furnished cabins. There's wildlife watching, there's fishing. You can play with the Longhorns, of course. Say hi to Gabriel for me. And indoor and outdoor eating and cooking. It is a party house, y'all. This is a great place to go or just kick back and relax with just being 5 minutes from downtown Blanco with breweries, eateries, shopping, and more. So again, if you are looking for that wonderful Texas Hill Country getaway, check out the Rockin' Diamond S Ranch. That is rockindiamondsranch.com. Or give our good friend Chuck Smith a call at 512-694-1969 and reserve your spot today.
All right. You can screen capture there if you want the contact info. Beautiful property. Now's the time to make your plans for all the summer getaways. All right.
Absolutely.
All right. So we got to celebrate Texas women's basketball co-champions this week on Sunday. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. On Sunday, it was Vic Schaefer's birthday. It was also senior night, senior day, because it was during the day. And they got to share. They ended up, because they split with South Carolina, everyone knows they split with South Carolina. So they ended up co-sharing the SEC championship, which makes 4 now SEC championships for Texas athletics this year. Look at this beautiful team. They're so happy. Okay, let's do this. Let's show also this week. Okay, in addition to that SEC championship, we got news that Vic Schaefer was awarded the Coach of the Year. Let's watch this. He got the news from CDC. Oh, it makes me so happy.
Coach, we got a pretty big issue. That's why the staff is there. I wish I could be there, but behavior that is expected, but you never know what's going to come. And when it does, it's a problem, right? And I just want to let you know that you are going to be named SEC Coach of the Year.
CDC had him scared. He was about to get fired.
Slick.
And let's watch Madison Booker get women's, and then we'll talk about it all. Let's watch this.
Something you want to tell Madison?
Well, I think, she and I, we talk all the time about different things. And one of the things that I'd like to ask you, Matt, how do you feel about being the Southeastern Conference Player of the Year?
What? Oh, wait.
And then everybody comes and cheers with her. How cool is that? Let's talk about the Vic Schaefer, Coach Schaefer winning Coach of the Year and Madison Booker winning Player of the Year.
Yeah.
And all the rest of the team getting snubbed.
Yeah, so we'll run it down in order. I mean, listen,
go for it.
You can't say enough about the job that Vic Schaefer has done in his time with Texas, right? And here's the thing, all right, to win Coach of the Year in the SEC. And yes, the Longhorns are number one. And yes, they've had a successful year. But let's not forget, Kim Mulkey's in this league. Dawn Staley's in this league. There are a lot of good coaches. Kim Caldwell, Kenny Brooks, the list goes on. There are a lot of good coaches in the SEC, right? So to win that award for him, that's huge, well-deserved. And I think, listen, it's funny, and it almost feels a little, poor time for me to mention this. And I'm not shading Karen Aston, but where the women's program was prior to Vic coming. I say poor timing because Karen Aston's having a hell of a year down at UTSA, right? Her Roadrunner program might be coming to Austin for an NCAA tournament matchup there. So that'd be kind of a storyline, her coming back to the 40 acres. But no, I mean, where the program was prior and where Vic Schaefer has it, that's tremendous. I did miss that availability, but I caught the replay of it on the LHN app where Maddie Booker was like, why am I here at 8 a.m., right? And to give you all a backstory, Vic told a story that when they came back, I believe it was from, oh man, I cannot remember where they were coming back from. I want to say it was Arkansas or somewhere. Anyhow, I'm forgetting where it was. Nevertheless, they had trouble getting back from, or it might be Mississippi State. Nevertheless, they had trouble getting back. And
it was Starkville. Yeah.
And Maddie had 8 a.m. classes, right? And Vic notes like, yeah, it's tough for players when they get back to campus. Bring it full circle here for a second. We talked about, them being adults and handling everything with IL. Let's not forget, you just got to go to school, right? You still got to stay eligible to play sports, and that hasn't changed yet, right? So when you get back from a game at 2, 3 a.m. and you got to wake up and have, 8 a.m. classes, right? Maddie was like, why am I here at 8 a.m. on a day that I don't have class? But I'm sure she appreciated that. Well-deserved there. And again, you take a look at the list of players, studs in the SEC, players like Anissa Morrow, who is the nation's leading rebounder at LSU. And just the list goes on. You can go through half of Dawn Staley's roster, et cetera, right? So for her to win SEC Player of the Year is huge. Did think there were some snubs. And I will say this, and I don't know, I can't say it's with confidence how they do it in the SEC. I can say when I was covering the smaller conferences, Conference USA, Sun Belt, et cetera, and it was that all the league's coaches vote. What that really was the SID's vote. Okay, that's what that was. I am gonna give the SEC a little bit more benefit of the doubt and assume that the coaches maybe have more of a factor involved. But it's hard to say that players like Shea Holley and Taylor Jones, and I mean the list goes on, Rory Harmon, that they ended up shafted. I mean, that you can say what you can say. It's pretty self-explanatory there.
Yeah. Coach Schaefer did have comments about his players being, snubbed for this, for the top, 17 of the 17 players recognized in first and second teams. Just one was a Longhorn. I mean, you go 15-1 in the toughest women's basketball conference, and you can only name one player that is the best at their, or one of the best at their position. And so he chose his words wisely, but he just rounded it up. Like, he named some of his best players. Again, not to take away from, this is what he said, not to take away from other players, but he's received lots of phone calls all over the country with that same question. Like, where are you? Why aren't your players on this the top, SEC all conference? But you know what? He got a conference championship on his birthday, and still did get player of the year in the SEC. But there are other players who are very deserving of that, those honors too. Did they get snubbed?
Yeah, I agree. I would definitely think it's fair to call it a snub. I think that when you look at each position, you'd be hard pressed to pick 16 players that were better than everybody on the Texas team. That feels like a snub to me, for sure. Evan saying it's a magical team. I agree wholeheartedly. What I will, if I'm going to look for the silver lining here, I am going to say maybe this is a little bit of fire, right? This is additional fuel, feeling like that snub. Maybe this is that VY moment, VY not getting the Heisman. I don't know. Maybe it can spark the team even more. Not that they're an unmotivated team. Let's be very clear. They are the number one team in the nation right now. But before we move on too far, I do want to say this. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. So we're showing that they are staying at number one. A coin flip, y'all. I have so many qualms with seeding your teams in the tournament championship, where there's a decent amount on the line, right? Between 1 and 2, it's a pretty big difference in the brackets. Coin flip, you couldn't look outside. You couldn't use statistics. You couldn't use actual team attributes to compare. Look, I've had people say, oh, well, if you did the head-to-head and you counted the points up, South Carolina still would have taken. Okay, fine, but at least you're using basketball to determine how you
point differentials against common opponents, like something on the court.
Look outside of the conference. If you have exhausted all in-conference options, look outside of the conference, but still use the team statistics. A coin flip, y'all. I still have issues with it.
I ranted about that Sunday. First off, there's a reason why you are Dr. Rocky, okay? And I'm not shading Greg Sankey, but let's start with the coin flip, all right? Because Rocky, I agree with you, and Megan, you too. You could use any scenario of statistical analysis to say, all right, this is what we're going to use. But let's come to the coin flip. Greg, the one that you practiced for 2 hours, you don't let the coin hit the ground. That was a beef of mine. You toss the coin up and then you catch it, and come on, dog. Like when I saw that, I was like, really?
Did you also note that they never showed both sides? They never showed both sides of the coin.
I didn't notice that. They were going to look conspiracy theory. I didn't notice that.
Not to be a conspiracy theorist, but how do we know that there was a Longhorn on one of those sides here? Okay.
Yeah. But I like the way talking about, that plus the snub. Like, everyone's like, okay, our buddy Chuck, Dr. Smith, something to prove. Got some bulletin board material. It's all lining up. Hopefully, it's lining up in their favor. So they're going into the SEC Conference Championship, and let's show the brackets here so we can kind of get an idea of who they're playing. This is, I'm going to make it bigger so I can read it. Did you know that the Aggie women are ranked 16 out of 16? I did not know they were that bad this year, but there they are, the worst of the SEC.
They're having a rough year.
Yeah, that's fine.
We'll leave it on that.
Yeah, we'll leave it on that. Okay. And then, so Texas is in the bracket, of course, with LSU. They will play the winner of Missouri/Mississippi State. That winner will play Ole Miss. The Texas will play that winner, and they don't play until Friday, I think. Yeah, Friday. So the first few games, SEC Network, and then it moves to Texas will be SEC Network. Final semis and final will be ESPN over the weekend. Can you imagine if they were to share regular season and then go probably toe to toe with? Well, they got to get past LSU again, probably, but South Carolina again for this SEC championship tournament champion. Woo! It's gonna be some good basketball.
It's be some great basketball. Eric, does anything stand out to you? How do you like Texas's odds through this SEC tournament?
I've been on the record of saying this, and listen, LSU and Texas are in the same bracket. South Carolina, Kentucky in the same bracket. So, let's not just breeze past that. But for all intents and purposes, let's say that we're probably looking at a Texas, South Carolina rematch. I'm on the record of saying that Texas and or South Carolina on a neutral floor, that's anyone's ball game. You saw what happened when Texas had to go to Columbia, right? Colonial Life Arena was a rough day at the office of Vic Schaefer's club. When Carolina Staley had to come to Moody Center, they lost. Well, where's the SEC women's tournament? Greenville,
South Carolina.
That's a home game for South Carolina.
Yes.
So I do think, and I'm going to stay true to what I've said, that if it does come down to Texas and South Carolina, I think South Carolina will win. I think that's a de facto home game. But whether it's Texas, LSU, Notre Dame, USC, UCLA, and I'm leaving out one more off the top of my head, I think South Carolina. 1 through 6, I think in the come tournament time, any of those pairings could beat each other on a neutral floor because they all are talented teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, I want to bring up something. I've got another rant to make here. Now that Texas is in the SEC, we hear all the time that, Texas bullies everybody. Oh, they ruined the Southwest Conference. They ruined the Big 12. Now they're in the SEC, and Aggies claim that we're ruining the SEC. Does Texas have the weight to be able to change where some of these locations, like some of these championships are played? You're talking about Atlanta for the football championship. That was a Georgia home game, period.
Yeah.
And I don't care what anybody says. That was a Georgia home game.
Just like the Big 12 basketball is always in Kansas City. Like, it's a Kansas home tournament. Like, those things are just those things, I guess.
Do you think Texas has the weight? Are we the big bad wolf that everybody claims us to be and pulling the puppet strings to move some of these games, these championships, at least more central, somewhere that makes a little bit more sense for all the teams? What are your thoughts on that, Eric?
It's so funny you mentioned that because I thought that not this last year, but when media days were announced as being in Dallas, right? I was like, okay, that's interesting because you're getting all those teams to come west, right? All those guys got to come west. I do think Texas and Oklahoma both will make the case that, hey, can we do a little something here? The question is where, because you don't have a lot of major cities that aren't in the state of Texas, right? No disrespect to, if we're just coming from the South all the way through, because you look at like Charlotte, that's still quote unquote ACC territory.
Right.
Does it put us right back in Atlanta?
That's what I'm saying is during my time covering Conference USA, I've driven through Mississippi. That ain't happening. You're not going to Arkansas. If you come like Midwest, you're thinking like Kansas City, but that's Big 12 territory. So to answer your question, Megan, I think you're kind of locked in because from an infrastructure perspective, where are you going to host all the media and fans? And
you're telling me Nashville can't handle something like that?
I would say Nashville. That's the one. I think that's the one that if you want some sort of a mid ground, you could go there. But outside of Nashville, you don't have anywhere else, right?
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. But again, I will sit here and argue that Greenville isn't it can handle the people coming in, but is Greenville really, are we talking on the scale of a Houston or a Dallas or it's Greenville? Come on.
Listen, that's definitely a fair point, Megan, no doubt.
All right. Brian Davis reported that Vic Schaefer said that the players are going to get 2 full days off so that they can walk around campus and be acknowledged as champions and then come back and get to work ready for the championship tournament. So that's pretty cool to say. I want them to go walk around campus and be celebrated. Love it. I love it. He's the kind of coach I would love to play for, Coach Schaefer.
And Vic practices his players hard too. So they could use a couple of days off to just kind of bask in the accomplishment.
Absolutely.
All right. The other side, we're going from championship winning, number 1 in the country, best player in the conference. Now let's talk men's basketball.
We're going to bring down the mood a little bit, y'all. We're going to bring down the mood a little bit here.
We're going to keep it short and sweet. That game last night, they had like a 87% chance of winning with 5 or 6 seconds left. They were up by 4, but they can't inbound the ball. So then within a second, they're going to overtime, but they survived in overtime. I watched that game. Everybody, I think we all agree. We love Rodney Terry as a human. We wanted him to do really well because he's such a good person and he's part of the program before. What writing is on the wall to you? We know they have OU this weekend. They have to win big and do some damage in the SEC tournament. Are they in the bubble? Are they not? There's different projections. What do you see as the writing on the wall for Coach Terry this year?
Yeah, not to lead with the question.
Listen, Rocky's tapping an inner journalist, right? In the hard-hitting question, right? No, I mean, listen, there's no denying that Rodney Terry is in danger of losing his job. I don't think there's any denying that, right? You take a look at the trajectory of the program over the last 2 years. You go from the Elite Eight run to the round of 32, and you say, okay, you missed out on Ron Holland. That was supposed to be your top recruit. He chooses to go to the G League. All right, this year you're going to get your guy, and Trey Johnson. That's all we heard last year was, well, Trey's locked in. Trey's coming. And Trey's lived up to expectations. He's the leading scorer in the SEC.
Yeah.
And Rocky, you watched the game. Megan, you've seen this team all year. Every time the ball leaves Trey Johnson's hands, it looks like it's going in. I mean, just one of the smoothest shots in all of college basketball for someone of his age. But the roster construction hasn't worked out, right? For a myriad of reasons. Injuries. Tremont Mark opened the year with a groin injury. He's had an ankle. Kendall Weaver's been banged up.
Weaver not coming is huge.
Jason Kent had a wrist injury. I mean, they've had a lot of injuries. That's no doubt about that. But, and this is where it's very fair to place the blame squarely on Rodney Terry and Chris Ogden as the constructors of this roster. They went out and got a bunch of guys who are really talented. Jordan Pope was the leading scorer on his team last year. Same thing with Tremont. But they clearly aren't able to be as efficient with less minutes, which all of the transfers, Mark, Julian Larry, Pope, and who am I missing there? Mark, Pope, Kent, and Larry. Those 4 transfers, less minutes, less shot attempts, and they aren't able to be as efficient with reduced time, right? And that's on the constructors of the roster to say, hey, can we fit this in a way that will work around Trey? So there's step 1. Here's step 2, and I will defer to you guys on this because I didn't cover basketball that year. I got here for RT's first official year. If you look at our Horns 24/7 message boards, a lot of the sentiment, and I'm in a no-win situation, right? Because I get people who say there's a comment that I got that said, Eric defending Rodney Terry is becoming nauseating, right? And guess what? I can tell you,
Eric, just stay off social media.
Just stay off
social media.
And I can tell you who doesn't think that I am defending him a ton, and that's Rodney Terry. Okay, so I'm in a no-win situation, but this is something I will defer to you guys on. If you're an interim coach, right, and that's what Rodney Terry was with the Chris Beard situation, you got to knock it out of the park when you get the job, because there are going to be a certain portion of the fan base who said, why didn't we go get somebody? Why did we just hand this person the job, right? And the sentiment that I get, Megan and Rocky, is there's a portion of this Texas men's basketball fan base that never wanted Rodney Terry as the full-time guy.
For sure.
Right? And those things don't help, because I'll tie it all around and pass it back to you guys. I reported this earlier this year. Texas is 8th in NIL funding in the SEC. All right. So we had the conversation about buying and whatnot. They're 8th. Okay. They're not first, not second, they're 8th. And no, just because you buy players doesn't equate to wins. However, especially in a sport like basketball, it's a big factor. Okay. And maybe, just maybe, if some of those people who never wanted Rodney Terry had a coach that maybe, inspired them to open up their wallets, maybe that 8th goes up to 4th or 5th. I mean, to 5th or 4th or whatever it may be. Right. So all in all, it's a tough situation for RT, as you said. And I agree. RT is a great person, human being, Texan through and through. He loves this state, great affinity for the University of Texas, but they're going to need a win against Oklahoma. They're going to need, in my mind, at least 2 wins in the SEC tournament, which gets you to 20 wins overall. And then they have a real, they're in the conversation. Anything short of that, if I'm not in Nashville for at least three days, I think the season ends, in the SEC tournament.
Yeah. If we talked about this over the weekend and somebody's like, well, off to the NIT. And I'm like, I would think they would turn down an NIT bid, right? And just close this season and start fresh the search, right? There's no need to drag it out for the NIT right now.
I don't know. I'm so torn on that. I'm so torn on that, Eric. I'd love your input on this, Eric. I feel like,
yeah,
I just feel like this is one of those moments where if you are going to have, yes, NIT is not the standard. NIT is not the goal. NIT is not where everybody wants to be, but it is still valuable playing time. It is still, the players do still get rewarded. And after the mental beating on social media throughout the season that they have taken, I don't know. For me, if you're a coach, even if you're a coach on that hot seat, it's hard not to turn down that opportunity to reward your players. Now, is there a risk that Texas peters out in the NIT and then it's really over? Yeah, there's that too. Maybe it's not worth that risk there. Eric, what are your thoughts? I'm sorry, I cut you off earlier.
No, you're fine. Here's the biggest factor why I think Texas would inevitably turn down an NIT bid. You talk about being a great opportunity for all the players. It is, except for one guy, one Richard Johnson III, who's going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft. I don't think Trey Johnson's going to come play in the NIT.
No,
I didn't want to risk it.
That's like going to a crappy bowl game when you're a first round pick. I don't blame them for saying, good luck, 6-6 team. I'm going to start getting ready for the NFL draft, right?
Is that a new trend? Is that a new trend that we see in college? Texas would accept, but Trey opts out. I mean, is that something we may see?
It's funny because we don't really have a test case because, and I'm not saying this to shade Texas or shade RT, you don't see very many teams with top 5 players in the NBA draft projected who end up in the NIT. So we don't have a test case to say yay or nay, but I could not see, and listen, Trey loves to hoop and Trey, is passionate about hooping, but I cannot see, and he could prove me wrong if this, does end up coming to fruition. I can't see him a guy who is at this point with the way he's been balling, top 10, top 5 pick, saying, all right, yeah, I'm going to go risk tearing my ACL or whatnot for an NIT. I can't see that.
Yeah. I think to me, the bigger picture is if things don't go the way, like if it's just a terrible showing, they didn't make the tournament and the writing's on the wall that, Coach Terry's on his way out, I don't think they would accept an NIT bid. It's just close the door, finish the season. Let's start looking ahead. And anyway,
I can appreciate that. I will say the thing that frustrates me as I'm watching, Eric, and I want to pick your brain on this a little bit. Like, what do you think it is? What has been the demise of this Texas team? Because it seems like, look, I was at the A&M game in the Moody where they came back from 22 down.
That was
they have talent. They have the ability to hoop when they want to. But I was also at the Arkansas game where it was just an ass kicking from the first buzzer.
The game we were at Saturday was an ass kicking.
It was rough. It was rough. And when I'm watching the team, again, from a fan's perspective, it has been ages since I have played basketball. But it feels like to me watching this men's team, I mean, especially when you put them next to the women's team, night and day difference. It feels like the men's team is 5 individuals out on the court playing, not really executing. I can't discern any game plan that's out there. It feels like 5 individuals kind of out there hooping and doing their thing. And like, I don't know, shovel the ball over to Trey, see what he can do. Maybe we'll watch him play some basketball. That to me feels like a major failing from a coaching standpoint. From a fan standpoint, it's tough to watch. It's frustrating to watch at this level. What do you think? What are you seeing out there?
I don't know when you guys chose to leave the Georgia game, but there were plenty of fans who were getting barked out of Moody Center by the
we
small...
don't leave. We don't leave.
Stay till the end.
We go from eyes of Texas to eyes of Texas, win or lose.
Okay, so that is
win or lose.
That is not a good look when you have visiting fans. You were there at Arkansas. You heard the Pig Suey chants. That's been a common refrain is insert visiting team, 15 minutes into the game, they'll be doing their chant of choice, right? So there's that. But Megan, to your question, you're spot on. This isn't just a one-year thing. And that's why it's tough for RT. You go back to last year, there was a lack of cohesion when you had Caden. I'm just going to go to the transfers, players who were transfers last year. Kendall was really the main transfer who looked like he could come in and kind of just be a guy immediately, right? Caden Shedrick was a transfer who looked kind of out of sorts. IT Horton transferred him from my alma mater, UCF. That didn't work out. There's one more that I'm missing off the top. Well, Max Asmus was Max Asmus. He played well, but Max is all of 5'10", right? So he has his deficiencies there. Tyrese Hunter. God bless Tyrese Hunter. He looks like a different dude at Memphis. He is balling right now. It wasn't working. Same thing with Dylan Mitchell. This year, it's the same thing. And I'm not trying to be repetitive, but the lack of cohesion with the transfers. Again, Mark and Pope are guys who they're used to having the ball in their hands. Jordan Pope was the leading scorer at Oregon State, where it's like, you're the guy. He was the Trey Johnson of that team. Tremont Mark was the primary point guard at Arkansas, where it's like, hey, the ball is in your hands. Now these guys are having to play off ball, just kind of wondering, when is the ball going to come to me? And if the defense traps me, I better get it back to Trey. Let's play hot potato, right?
Yep.
So that is why, again, I hate to be so critical of RT because he brought in talented players. These are all talented guys.
He's just recruiting his ass off for sure.
Yeah, just this mix coming together has not worked.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It is again, we all love RT as the guy. But final question for this: what do you think it takes? Is there a possibility RT saves his job? And if so, what would that take? What would that look like?
I posted this
for
on
those just joining us. Yeah,
I posted this over on our message boards because we do a daily Ask Me Anything, and today was my day for my AMA, and I was asked that question. I think anything short of an Elite 8 run, even if he gets to the Sweet 16, you kind of have to wonder, well, is this fool's gold, right? Like, can we do this again? Because guess what? They're going to lose guys off this roster, and they're going to have to go hit the transfer portal again and play the dollars and cents game. If there are people who are not thrilled with Rodney Terry, they're going to have an even tougher time trying to get this roster put together if the money isn't there. And guess what? As currently constituted, there is no Trey Johnson in this year's recruiting class that's coming in to be the guy, right? So I would say it would take a deep NCAA tournament run for where you kind of force CDC's hand and say, I can't fire this guy.
Yeah, that's possible, but probably not probable, right? All right, moving on, because brought the party down talking men's basketball. Saturday night, Oklahoma, they have not lost to Oklahoma in forever. Knock on wood. Texas has home night, senior night, 7 p.m. Moody Center, best arena in the world for that size. It was voted. So we will be there Saturday night cheering for the Longhorns men's basketball. It's just come up. They need us more than ever right now. Show your love to the whole team. Let's move on to softball. They were playing. They were beating up on Baylor. Do you have the latest score, Megan?
I can find it. Give me just a second.
Will you check? No rush. But we were watching earlier. They were playing Baylor tonight, and they were beating them pretty good earlier. Still ranked number 1 in the country. They're number 1 and number 2. Some people have them number 1. Some people have OU number 1. But they just hosted the Longhorn Invitational this last weekend. They went 5-0. This coming weekend, they're going to Ohio State. Is it still really cold up there? Probably. And they play a bunch of St. Francis, Oakland, Merrimack, and Dayton. Anyway, and then Ohio State. But
so softball did win. Softball did win 4-0 over Baylor.
Okay, good. Last I saw it was 3-0. That's good. And then they start South Conference play next weekend. They go to number 3 Florida. So it gets real quick the following weekend, March 15th. Do you get to watch a lot of the softball too? Eric, what are you loving about this team?
I get to take a quick peek because usually, the way we split up the duties, Chip, big softball guy, not that I am not, but he's a big softball guy. So he tends to take the lead. However, Tegan Kavan, right? Let's just start there. You want to talk about a stud, you have to start there. And the list goes on. Reese Atwood, et cetera, as far as the roster. But the big thing for me that I kind of comes to mind is this, right? It's kind of a common refrain. And it sounds so weird to say, but it's just the truth. The SEC is a softball league. It's another gauntlet in terms of a softball league.
Yeah.
Going to Gainesville. One of the things, and I'll be really interested, I'm going to go 10,000 foot view here. Mike White stood up last year and said, hey, we need some renovations to McCombs Field, right? Like we need a little something more. They're going to go to some venues. And I'm curious to see if CDC maybe tags along, or maybe if he sends, Sarah Baumgartner or someone out there to kind of get a look at some of these venues, the way they do it, because there are some excellent softball venues in the SEC, and say, hey, what do we kind of want to bring back to Austin, right? Because that's the thing. The number 1 team in the nation can't be in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th best, softball facility in the SEC. And I'm just telling you right now, there are some gems in the Southeastern Conference.
I will tell you this, when at the time it was built, the Red and Charlene McCombs Field was the most expensive softball stadium per square foot that was ever built at the time. I do agree with you. That is something that needs some upgrades. It's a nice facility. It's good. We saw the new, backdrops in the outfield. That was a big improvement over the ones that were falling apart and literally letting trash come through. So hey, big step up there. But I will say this did come up in the town hall. Both the softball and baseball fields were brought up, and the facilities and needing the need to modernize them a little bit, add some on. And a big push for that was because of the SEC. So CDC did address it. Of course, he ever so tactfully skirted it just a bit, said, well, these things cost money and we don't want to get in debt. We're one of the few programs that doesn't owe a ton of money for the renovations that we've done. And to his credit, he's right. The Moody Center, Texas doesn't owe any money on. We're not in this massive financial hole like OU football was for a long time, OU athletics, because of football renovations. Texas A&M, a lot of people forget this, on top of the Jimbo Fisher buyout, they were still paying for those Kyle Field renovations. They still owe quite a bit of money for that. So he did address it. It is top of mind awareness. But I would offer that unless we get a big donor like a Red or Charlene McCombs coming in and just saying, here's $20 million, have fun, it might be a few years before we see those really big facility upgrades there.
Get your name on it.
Yeah, like $20. That's what I got. That's what I got for you.
You're good for a brick in the stadium, right?
Yeah, maybe like half a brick. Is a pebble? Is a small sandstone? A bathroom tile, perhaps? I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be a while till softball's back in Austin. Not until the second weekend of SEC plays. So you have time to watch them, stream them online. All right, what you can see in Austin, which I just watched, which was amazing, was beach volleyball. Have you gotten to see the beach volleyball yet, Eric?
I haven't, and it's the first year, right? Like I have not.
Yes. So they had like a trial year. They had like a
Mm-hmm.
partial year last year as they were building the roster. And this is a little clip from what they posted on social this week.
We're gonna have to fix your sound.
It's just that's it. That was it. It was just a little clip of them playing. So what it was, let me pause. Okay, so Richard and I went this weekend on Friday. So they were playing Friday and Saturday, and they had Coastal Carolina and Tulane, SFA, and A&M Corpus Christi. And it was so fun. First, they have all the street parking, so you can just park for free, walk in for free. Everything is all set up with the bleachers like right on the sand, and they had 4 nets, and you're right on the action, like literally getting hit with the volleyballs and throwing the balls back to the players because they keep rolling up on us. And they had the little gazebo. It's at the intramural fields over at the Whitaker Fields over at 51st and Lamar in North Central Austin, north of campus. And this is where we used to play rugby at these fields. They still do play rugby there, and they have lacrosse, all the things down there, the intramural fields. But now they've built up so much. They built up this huge gazebo and this big like a clubhouse kind of thing with nice restrooms and shaded patio seating, as you can walk in, and they had a little stand with concessions and a little Chick-fil-A stand and music going, and it's like a party out there. And it was a beautiful, gorgeous day, and the players are so good, and the families are really hoping people come and watch more beach volleyball, because some of the families, the player number 2 and number 4, Cutter? No, I'm gonna think of the name. Sorry. They were saying they have 2 daughters who play, and they're setting up tailgating, and they want everybody to come and be part of the community and cheer. Like, what more can you ask for? It's like easy in and out, free everything. Like, it's so awesome. The beach volleyball was so great. I would just want everybody to go.
I love it. I love it. And Rocky, I appreciate you saying that. You're not the only person that I've heard say beach volleyball is really fun. You go out there, especially on a beautiful day in Austin, Texas. We are hitting that time of year that tricks people into thinking that we've got the best weather all the time. It is that south by season.
They move here and don't leave.
Right. They get here, it's 75 degrees outside, beautiful, bright, sunny.
It is freezing in Ohio.
Yeah. And it tricks people into moving. But this is, if you are going to go watch some beach volleyball, oh my goodness, what a perfect time to do it. So I love that you're bringing that to us. And yes, this is the first full season that Texas has had with beach volleyball. Last year, Rocky, like you said, while they were building the facilities, they played about a half season, but every game was away because there wasn't a place to play here.
It was so fun. The four courts lined up. They're not very big, little 2-on-2, like Olympic looking volleyball. So it's just so fun. I think everybody should go, and you can pop in, watch a couple matches and check. I mean, just go support. But you can't for a while because they're out of town for a while. They'll be back the 21st of March. They get to go to Manhattan Beach, California. That's nice.
That's not terrible. All right, Rocky. So I have to ask you this. When you were there, did you, Texas did well, right? Texas came out on top.
Yes, they won all their matches, 4-0.
How were the celebrations? How were the celebrations here? Were they good?
What do you mean? Like,
did they celebrate? Was there good celebrating on the court?
They, they high five each other. They come and do the volleyball hand things. The thing they do where they touch two hands, and then I don't know. But what's fun is, so they have 4 courts. 2 of them they play 5 matches. And they said for this tournament, play the 3 best of 5 wins, right? So once you get to 3, you won, but they play all 5 matches so that everyone can play. So the last 2, I guess, once you're up 3-0, which Texas is, the last 2 games, they don't really matter, but they play them right. So, they're fun. And then as the certain teams finish, they go and all line up and start cheering. They can go and cheer for the other teams and other teammates that are playing other matches. It's not like tennis. It's a lot like tennis. It's so fun.
So no over the top celebrations, because what I'm going to ask you here, I've got to pit you two together or against each other for just a minute. Over the top celebrations. Eric, you have some opinions on this. Care to share?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, let's show what started this conversation earlier. This re-sparked the conversation of is celebrating on people's turf. Was the Auburn basketball team who went on to lose at A&M, the number 1 Auburn basketball team. They at the court, on the court of another. What team were they at? Who were they visiting?
Kentucky.
Kentucky. Thank you. They won at Kentucky, so they have belts, and they're whipping, off to the side themselves, or like whooping the belt, doing that little belt to ass kind of motion. And you had thoughts about this celebration, Henry.
So, I'll say this, right? First off, this happens all the time behind closed doors. For anyone who has never been to Moody Center, in terms of the under area where the locker rooms are, the visiting locker room is right by the media room. And last year, the most popular song that you heard in the visiting locker room was the Big X the Plug Texas, after beating Texas. When Texas A&M, or wasn't A&M, I'm forgetting which team it was, came in and beat Texas at home. You heard a lot of belt to ass, because the players got to walk right by us to get to the visiting locker room. When Georgia came in and beat them, it was DMX, Rough Riders anthem. Like you hear all these things. It is usually aren't out in public. But to your question, Rocky, if you don't want teams to celebrate on your home floor, just don't lose. I have no issue with players being out front with these celebrations. Guess what? We saw Texas, right? Steve Sarkisian said that, hey, we're going to win a certain way. Now, I am not calling Steve a hypocrite, but, we did see some Texas players at Michigan get that big old Texas flagpole out there, and we're running around with that, right? I don't mind it, right? As long as it's not insulting to, and when I say insulting to fans, I mean directed at fans, right? If you're not, giving the middle finger or anything like that, because then you get dangerous with kind of inciting fans to do things back to you, right? But if you're just doing your little celebration or whatnot, we can use my alma mater, right? Let's use a controversial one. Rodney Terry spoke up about the alleged, because I didn't see it, so I'm calling it alleged. I did not see it, and I've heard different representations of what happened. But the horns down, going through the line. Some of the UCF representatives said that they were doing it not towards the players, but kind of just doing the horns down, like as a jubilation of victory, right? I don't mind it, right? I mean, listen, and you guys, I will defer to you on this. I have learned the perception of Texas fans is not the reality. The perception of Texas fans, oh my gosh, you guys are so offended by the horns down. And
clutching our pearls, right?
When everything I've been led to believe is that Texas fans don't really care too much about the horns down. It's silly when like it's two teams that don't involve Texas and you randomly see a horns down. Like that's always silly, right?
That's funny. Yeah.
I love that, to be honest. Like
But they're thinking about Texas
rent
right
free.
now.
Rent free.
Yeah.
But to bring it all the way home, Rocky, like, yeah, I'm a big fan as long as it doesn't get out of line directed towards players or towards fans. If you're just doing your thing out there on the court after, players have vacated the floor, have at it. If you don't want it to happen, beat the other team.
Rocky, you have some thoughts on this. What are you thinking?
I see both sides. Celebrate, yes. If you don't want the team to celebrate, like you said, don't let them beat you. But also, to me, I don't think all celebrations are equal, right? That's what I said. Like, you can cheer, you can get together, blah, blah. The belt thing, I know Texas uses that phrase too, belt to ass, BTA. They talk about it all the time, right? To physically get the belt and do the whooping motion on the court, that to me, I don't know. That's not, I wouldn't want my athletes to do that. I'll just leave it at that. If I was coaching that team, I wouldn't want my athletes to do that. If other people think that's fun for their kids to celebrate that way, that's them. I wouldn't let my athletes do that.
That's fair. That's fair. I will kind of harken back to, Eric, you brought up the horns down and the perception of how Texas fans take it versus how we actually take it, the reality of how we take it. I will say this. When I was younger, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, horns down bothered me in the sense of the intent, right? There's a difference between what OU does, like, oh, horns down, whatever, and what's become popular. There's a difference between just doing that in your own space, like you were talking about, and getting in my face as a fan, inches away from my face.
Oh.
To me, that's more about a violation of my personal space. That's just the same as a middle finger, right? Like in my personal space, that's a little different. I will say, as I've gotten older, I've gotten much more mellow about the horns down. I think it's funny when people do it. I love to say, my thing that I'll tell them is I flip it back on them. When they put the horns down, I'm like, hell yeah, horns down. And they're, what? I'm like, baby, I got long horns. When the horns are down, the bull's charging. You're in trouble. You don't want to see the horns down. You better be running when the horns are down. So, I think in my perception, and when I travel to games, I think the horns down, I don't think it generally bothers Texas fans. I think when it crosses the line, when it's more about being in my personal space, and when you are aggressively, your intent is to tell me fuck you, but you say it as horns down in my personal space, that's a little different, right? But those are two different things, like the sportsmanship versus the action itself.
I'll quickly piggyback off that, and I'll say this. Two quick stories. One, to your point, it's fair, right? Because I am not in the crowd for games, right? It has been a while, since I've been in the crowd for a game. So there's that. The second thing, I do remember this because this was my first experience at the Cotton Bowl, right? 2023, when Oklahoma beat Texas. We all know what happened there, right? For those who don't know, there is not a media elevator to get you to where you need to go for the post game. You have to, you go usually down the stairwell, and then you have to walk through the corridor to get to the back end zone. So remember that game came down to what, like the Hail Mary or whatever it was. So we couldn't get there early, right? We couldn't leave, unlike this year. And listen,
you had to slum it with us peons. I hear you. It's a tough life, man. It's a tough life.
It's a tough life. Although at DKR, it's kind of the same thing. Usually go down the grandstand to get to the field. But I'm not saying this is all Oklahoma fans, but the amount of Oklahoma fans who were drunk and obnoxious and horns down, I can empathize with you, Megan, because that would, after 4 hours of being in the sun, and I've probably had an adult beverage or two, I probably would take your horns down in my face. Is all right. Let's take this outside.
Yeah, to me, it's about intent. If you're just celebrating your team, putting horns down, fine, whatever. I do not care. I genuinely do not care. If it is intended as an FU and you're in my space, we may have a few words about it. But
yeah. All right. So we know we're getting close to wrapping up soon. We have a few top stories. We know your time is really valuable, so you're welcome to hang out with us for a few more minutes as we do some of the top stories and get your thoughts on those. But we understand if we're getting up to 10 o'clock, so I don't know what your schedule is, but up to you. You're welcome to join us. So we
have that 8 a.m. class, that Maddie Booker 8 a.m. class.
Maddie Madison Booker in the morning. So we have a couple of just fun, quick top stories that we like to grab the news from around and share some fun things. So Megan, you found this, the Toronto changing. It's the Toronto Raptors have the floor with this digital screen with all these different choices, and they can pick the way they want the floor to look, like the complete design of the floor with a touch of a button.
Yeah, they practice on the floor of where they're going to play, which, look, I don't know if that changes it as far as your surroundings, your elements, but I love the idea of being able to familiarize yourself with the court. Sometimes we see these wild and crazy court designs. I just thought that was the coolest thing. At the touch of a button, you change. Can I do that for my house? Like, I want to do that in my house.
Like for the holidays, like have a Christmas floor and the Easter floor. And
Eric, have you seen that in person? Have you seen is Toronto the only one that has that? I'm genuinely curious about this.
As best I understand, there are like 3 or 4 NBA teams who are utilizing that technology. But like you said, I think it's crazy. I love it. And again, NBA, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds, this is all up their alley, right? Like, It may seem a little like, do we really know all that? People like us, but it's right up their alley for them.
That's cool. Listen, I'm gadgety. I like it. The day that I can do that to my car and decide what design I have on my car, amazing. I love it.
All right. So you get to go, Eric, to a lot of different stadiums, and you get to see all kind of stadium food. Do you get to walk around and try the different foods, or do you just eat the free stuff they give you in the booth?
I'm eating the free food. However, I had one experience, Big 12. I don't know if you went to the Big 12 men's basketball tournament when they did like the specialized food for each team. I did.
Danny Davis was hyped about that.
Daniel Davis. Daniel Davis has overrated music takes, and I will come to him another time on that. But he is a food connoisseur, so yes. So that was pretty cool. But typically, it's free media food.
Okay, because if you get to this stadium,
Mark Light,
Miami baseball was playing Villanova, and this is what they had. It's a Philly cheesesteak milkshake with vanilla ice cream and vanilla syrup. So someone dumped their perfectly good sandwich into melted milk. Yeah. I mean,
okay, Eric, I need as a Floridian, I need your take on this. I know the milkshakes are a thing in Miami, but I need your take on this. What is happening? This is offensive to me as somebody who appreciates a good Philly. I gotta understand it.
What is happening here?
So here's the thing. Yeah, like as you mentioned, Megan, they do this all the time. This is routine for Miami. I've had a couple of the exotic ones. I don't know if I could get down with the Philly cheesesteak one. However,
how are you supposed to eat? There's soggy bread in there, man. Like that.
Soggy bread and milk.
I could deal. The brisket milkshake had me intrigued. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe that's the Texan in me. Yeah. I wanted to try the brisket milkshake, but a Philly cheesesteak. To me, I look at this and I'm like, they're just phoning it in at this point. I'm just going to take a sandwich, kind of a shitty sandwich, and just shove it in a melted milkshake. Why is the bread in there? I don't understand what is happening.
And why can't they season that meat? Like that meat looks like Lincoln Riley made that meat.
Who's in charge of this here?
Did Lincoln Riley make this Philly cheese?
So Eric, I'm going to ask you, wood, is this a wood?
This would be a wood, only because I've had them in Miami before, and they're not that bad. Some are actually pretty good. Not a routine thing, but it'd be a wood.
I don't know. I might do it out of morbid curiosity, but the soggy bread is what gets me, man.
You know how like when we were kids and we had to pull up a chair to the sink to do dishes?
Yeah.
And you're pulling out dishes and you're washing dishes for the family, and every now and then there's like a piece of bread
that fell into the sink.
Anyway, let's move on. But I hope the people who got it did like it. Okay, so this was a big story over the weekend. Have you covered any cheer competitions, Eric? Have you ever had cheer competitions?
I've covered a lot, but I've never covered a cheer competition.
Okay, so our daughter, she used to do these cheer competitions, and they're actually really fun. And we had a good group of fun moms who would and dads. And we, the kids, they go do their hair, they make up their go, and they're with the team all day. And so all the parents would, we'd bring our own bar, and we'd shake drinks and make drinks and get, ready to go cheer for the kids. And we had
parents bring their own bar.
Dinner. We had a good fun group. Well, apparently there was this at the same convention center where we used to always go, Kay Bailey Hutchinson Center in Dallas. There was massive panic. So this is what really happened. This fight between parents, and I'll show you a quick second of this.
Back up.
So you can hear children crying. These are parents in a brawl fighting at a cheer competition. Well, in this fight, some poles or big things went clanging and falling down. So, of course, in America, everyone screams "gun," and they all take off running out of this competition. And it looked thousands, I'm talking 20-something thousand, 30-something thousand people at this event, all mass evacuate. Of course, they're panicked, they're scared, they're confused, nobody knows what's happening. They all take off running. And you can see that a lot of these kids, they don't have their backpacks or their cell phones or anything. They leave everything, and they're all this mass panic, and they run out. Did you see this story?
I did see the story, Rocky. Yeah. And like you said, it's kind of the day and time we live in, where these things happen. Okay.
Go ahead. She'll come back.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought you wanted me to hold on. No, yeah. I mean, it's the day and time we live in where, you hear a couple things, and it's actually happened to a friend of mine recently. She was over at, one of the massive malls in Florida, and there was like a fight that broke out, and people thought it was a gun, and people were hiding and whatnot. So yeah, unfortunately, it's just kind of scary. It is what it is. Yeah.
My heart also breaks for, the trauma and the terror, even if it turned out to be a false alarm, it's still terrifying and scary. But also you add to that these families who traveled from all over the country sometimes to these competitions, and they spend all year, all season, all year to get to this national championship tournament. And a lot of them didn't get to compete. They closed the event. It's canceled. These parents lost control, caused this big panic. Things escalated, and now thousands and thousands of competitors didn't even get to perform or compete at some of these kids, they spend months raising money and all the things to try to get to this competition. So it's just so unfortunate that some adults don't know how to act. Anyway, so one thing I wanted to show you, did you see the video of Sark impersonations?
No, I did not.
You got to see this and then be prepared, because we want your Sark impersonation.
My best impression of Coach Sark. Here we go, man. The script is already written, man. You just gotta go out there and execute. Good morning, man. How we doing? This is what we do, man. Every morning he's like, "Good morning, gentlemen." He like to say babe a lot. 50 yards, babe. Okay, babe. I teach culture here, guys, and culture is really important to us. And, guys played hard today.
No, I got it. I know. I already know.
One game at a time, one play at a time. Let's go. You're supposed to cut like this.
He love to clap them hands like that. It kills me.
There's one person that ain't got an impression of Sark, and that's me.
Guys, you gotta be tough.
Hey, guys, don't worry. It's not your fault. It's my fault for hiring you.
So, guys.
All right. So those are some of the players and then some of the coaching staff, training staff. Do you have a Sark impersonation? When you think of Sark, what lines pop in your head?
Yeah, there's lines. I can't do Steve's voice. There are lines. One of his that he uses routinely is, the key to the drill. The key to the drill is, and he uses that pretty often with the media. To be honest, to be honest with Steve uses that one a lot. I don't. Like I said, I don't have a Steve. I can do an RT, but I can't do.
Okay. Give us your RT.
Yeah, RT. Is pretty simple. So if let's pretend I've asked Rodney a question, it's like, well, Eric, that's a great question, and again, it comes back to getting your butt down, playing defense for 40 minutes. We got to play defense for 40 minutes, turn defense into offense. And that's how we're going to beat teams. Like you get a lot of that. It's the hoarse voice, especially after a game. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. I think Sark has his usual lines that you could probably make a bingo card when the weekly pressers come. So that's always fun. Are you a big NBA fan? Just moving to our top stories. I hope Megan can log back on. We lost Megan. I think she's having service issues, but hopefully she can log back in just to at least say goodnight to you before we log out. So we'll do two last things. One is the NBA. LeBron James hit 50,000 points. This is the video of him breaking the 50,000 point mark.
He has really improved in his decision making on the offensive end.
He has 26 20-point games this year. LeBron, open three. 22 seasons, 40 years.
22 seasons. Do you have a favorite NBA player? Is LeBron in your Mount Rushmore?
LeBron is in my Mount Rushmore. I mean, you're talking about someone who's from Central Florida, right? So for me, the pinnacle, my guy was Tracy McGrady, right? I'm an Orlando Magic fan. Tracy McGrady, and then in my younger years, Penny Hardaway. Like those are my two guys. But in terms of today's era, I mean, LeBron is the standard, 50,000 points. I don't like to get into the LeBron versus Jordan debate because they both were and are great in their own ways. And I feel like their legacy should be respected as such, because it's not that it's different eras, but they're great in their own ways.
Right. So here we have another big thing that happened with the NBA. Kevin Durant, he just passed Dirk Nowitzki in points. He's at 35,225. So he's now number 6 all-time point scoring. That's huge. Just behind Michael Jordan. Then Kobe Bryant, Karl Malone, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and now, of course, LeBron James, who passed Kareem a while ago, but now has hit the 50,000 points mark. Have you ever sat like courtside? I know you get media seats and all that, but have you sat like courtside of a game?
Never for an NBA game. So for Texas basketball during the early season, during the non-conference, when they're playing, lesser opponents who don't typically have radio crews, Scott McConnell, Texas SID, will sit the 2 beat writers, 3 beat writers, me, Thomas Jones from the Austin American Statesman. He'll sit us courtside. So I have sat courtside for college games.
Okay, so you know how normally, good, Megan's coming back. So you know how normally big celebrities sit courtside, right? Jennifer Hudson, did you see the video of her courtside?
No.
Watch this.
New York, the leader. And they call him Deuce. And boy, I tell you, he has been such a positive.
Protect Jennifer Hudson. Protect Jennifer Hudson.
No, not the glass. Those look real expensive too, partner.
And Common is making sure everybody's okay.
Let me see what Common did. Did he protect her?
He tried. He actually banged the glass.
Poor thing, she got her glasses hit with the ball on the side. Like you gotta be alert when you're on the. All right, we'll let Megan back in. All right, welcome back. Sorry, because you had to log back in a different way. I was like, just add yourself. But she's back. Hey, Megan, you're back.
Equipment failure.
All right, no, we were just not laughing at, but it was kind of funny that Jennifer Hudson got her glasses knocked off because she was courtside. All right, last thing. We'll let you go after this one last thing, and we'll wrap up. Thank you. We have lots of people watching. Eric Henry, 247 Sports at Eric C Henry _, right?
Correct.
At Eric C. Henry _. Thank you so much for joining us. We have one last thing we want to show you. You grew up, are you more of a 90s kiddo?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, 90s, 2000s.
2000s. Do you know, if I showed you this picture, and for the people who are listening, it is the General Foods International Coffees. There was orange cappuccino, Swiss mocha, and Cafe Vienna. Do you know what this is? Did your grandma drink this?
My grandmother, my mom actually ran a little small grocery store. So I have seen those before. Yes.
Okay, so in the 80s and the 80s and early 90s, if you drank this, like that was, it says like this is the height of sophistication. It was so fancy. Like people in the commercials, like the Grey Poupon people would have this cappuccino and then they would eat this. And I thought you were so rich. I didn't know this was like $1. I thought people were so rich if they could get this chocolate layered Viennetta cake. Have you ever had this?
I've never had it, but I remember like the commercials for them. That's ringing a bell, but I've never had it.
What things, like being a 90s, 2000s kids, what things when you were a kid, did you think, oh man, those people must be so rich to have that? And now you look back and you're like, that was $4.
You know, it's the first thing that comes to mind because I can remember this is like late 90s. I'm like 8, 9 with my aunt who loved these things. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but the little chocolates, Ferrero Rocher, or you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I thought for some reason that they were like the most like over the top candy. It wasn't just like a Snickers or a Twix. And I thought that like you had
they had a gold wrapper. Come on. That's
right,
fancy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. CB just said, check out the picture that Jade just tweeted out, and I'll share it with you right now. Thank you, CB, for that. There he is with his Thorpe Award where is he?
Gaylord, Oklahoma.
He's University of Oklahoma.
Gaylord.
Oh, he's sitting in front of OU.
That's a flex. All right, that's celebration, right? That is elite shit talking.
Question.
And I respect it.
I know you guys are closing up the show, so I'll make it quick.
Yeah.
No one recognized Jade Barron walk around Oklahoma's campus? I know it's late at night, but like Jade Barron used to walk around campus at OU and no one recognized him?
Let's be very clear. I'm going to be...
Are there people out there?
Okay.
Kind of delicate.
I've never been, so...
My experience with OU fans, especially after this year of football, they're very fair weather fans and don't necessarily pay. I'd be surprised if they recognized half of their own team, much less Texas. So I'll put that out there. Maybe it's a little over the top, but I stand by it. I'll stand on it.
I wouldn't recognize any of their players. So yeah. All right. Well, we'll wrap up. Thank you. We went a few minutes over, but thank you so much. We had just a few more fun things to chat about. So we really, really, really appreciate it. So tell everybody watching how they can follow you, find you, where to subscribe to what you're doing. Let them all know.
All right. I'll try to, make a mouthful into a tight, neat deal here. So find me on Twitter at Eric C. Henry _. Find my work at horns247.com, 247sports.com. Thursday mornings, AM 1300, The Zone with Mike Harge, Mark Henry, 7:35 weekly. And Wednesdays, ESPN Central Texas at 3:20 with Glenn Stretch Smith.
All right. Sounds good. We love Hardball Harge.
Absolutely.
You're
a busy man with a big old plan. We love it, Eric. So, man, again, thank you for joining us. We know your time is precious, and we truly appreciate you being here and all your insights. And it's always a great time. So we'd love to have you back. If you would want to come back on, we love having you here. So we appreciate you.
Of course. Anytime.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we know it's late, so we'll let you get going, but we will post this audio to the podcast and it'll be up tomorrow morning. So you can catch up or you can stream it back on Facebook. You can watch the video on Facebook. So thank you so much, Megan. We got him. It was great. It's so good. I know.
I love it. I love it. Sorry about those technical difficulties, y'all. Always is weird at the end. Apparently, everything that I thought was plugged in and charging was not actually charging. So everything died kind of all at once, which was a lot of
good.
fun.
I thought it was your internet because you just went away, and I said, "Oh,
yeah,
okay." Well, I'm glad you made it back in time to say goodnight and thank you to Eric.
Absolutely. So for y'all that are with us, we truly appreciate you. Again, we can't do this without you. Please be sure to like and subscribe. We are at Fire the Cannon Podcast on YouTube, and on Insta and X, we are at Fire the Cannon and the number 1. We love y'all. We appreciate you being here. We love your insights. We love your thoughts. We love your participation. Keep it coming. We're here live on Wednesdays, every Wednesday at 8 p.m. For tonight, I'm Megan.
I'm Rocky.
And we are Fire the Cannon. Hook 'em.
Bye, Megan.
Bye.